Path to Mediterranean Hegemony. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, Reaction from All Parties, 2 in 1 chapter. The reaction of the people made Ferdinand very depressed. The Bulgarian people have an expression of eating melon seeds and watching a play. It felt like I was used to it, as if I felt that the war was nothing special, and I didn't feel worried at all. Doesn't it mean that ordinary people hate war? Could it be that the way I opened it is wrong? Why everyone seems to be gearing up, planning to make a big fight. This is also related to the cultural traditions of the Balkans. Due to its geographical location, it has long been a strategic location for European powers to compete. War has been a part of the life of the Balkan people. Since the 2nd century BC, it has been ruled by Roman, Byzantine, Avars, Ottoman Turkey and other empires successively. Later the Huns, Avars, Lombards, Romans, Slavs and later the Ottomans all fought for control of the area. War is always present. Due to the long-term war, the people's bellicose spirit has been cultivated, because those who are afraid of war will not be able to survive. In the current Balkans, it can be said that it is a mixture of various ethnic groups. Pure-blooded ethnic groups hardly exist, but the spirit of belligerence has not changed. Think about history. Bulgaria mobilized 1.26 million troops to participate in the World War, and insisted on it for 2 years. You can know the attitude of the people to the war. Oppressed by the Ottomans for a long time, the Balkan countries have attached great importance to military construction after independence. It is also very sensitive to the surrounding wind and grass. As soon as Bulgaria expanded its army, it caused turmoil in the surrounding area. The foreign powers are okay. Just pay a little attention. A mere Bulgaria is not enough to make them jealous. The Balkan countries are interesting. Although the Ottoman Empire has declined, they still regard themselves as great powers, and the rotten governments are busy fighting for power. The then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Harem Pasha, laughed when he received the news, and did not care and passed it on directly to the government. As for whether this news finally reached Abdulhamid II, reigned from 1876 to 1909, this is unknown. Anyway, apart from sending diplomats to express concern, they did nothing, which is quite different from the previous attitude towards the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria. Serbia was much more sensitive, and the young Alexander Obrenović, reigned 1889 to 1903, expressed strong concern. Although not yet fully in power, the 16-year-old king summoned the cabinet for the first time. Gentlemen, what do you think of the expansion of the Bulgarian army? Alexander Obrenović. It is clear that Bulgaria was preparing for war, presumably allied with Russia, and they were emboldened to take military action. Home Secretary. Yes, I think Serbia should have made preparations now. Bulgaria's strategic goals are still uncertain. Now that the Russians are backing, the possibility of targeting us is very high. We should expand our military and prepare for war now, and don't give them a chance to take advantage of it. Opportunity. Minister of War. No, I don't think so. Don't forget that if Bulgaria wants to expand into Serbia, it also depends on whether the Austro-Hungarian Empire agrees. Don't think they will do it again now. And our finances are not rich now. There is no more money for you to squander. The Chancellor of the Exchequer retorted. How can this be a waste? If we don't expand our army, how can we defend the country? What if we are invaded by Bulgaria? How can we defend against it? The Minister of War asked rhetorically. Really? Is it possible to expand the army? In 1885, didn't you have a lot of advantages? In the end, you were beaten to the ground? The Minister of Finance said with a sneer. This is a slander. That's why we failed when we joined the Bulgarians. Otherwise the heroic Serbian army would not have failed. The Minister of War said with some lack of confidence. Young Alexander Obrenović had little patience. He didn't have much prestige either, and he looked very embarrassed looking at the constant quarrel below. Suddenly, he scolded, "Enough! Who is the target of Bulgaria? Only they know. You are arguing, and it's no use. What we need to be sure now is, what should Serbia do next? Historically, Alexander Blyanovich became pro-governor in 1893. Although he was young, he politically savvy. The Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Minister of War quarreled, both for their own interests. Of course, Serbia's poor financial situation is the key issue. If you don't stop it, you will soon become a war minister. Serbia's financial problems can be traced back to the War of Independence. But in 1885, the war against Bulgaria was defeated, and the economy paid a heavy price. The financial crisis intensified, and it has not been relieved until now. Serbia's annual budget is fiercely contested, and now if it follows Bulgaria's military expansion, it will greatly squeeze the budgets of other departments. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is most worried that Serbia still owes a lot of debt, including the military payment to Bulgaria in 1885, all of which are loans, which have not been repaid now. This issue can also be traced back to Milano Obrenović IV. During Serbia's independence, in order to obtain the support of Austria-Hungary, the two sides concluded a political and economic treaty, and Serbia was forced to sell a lot of political and economic sovereignty. Until now, there is no decent industry in Serbia. Facing the competition of Austro-Hungarian capital, the national capital collapsed and gradually turned to the pro-Russian faction, which was one of the reasons why Serbia turned to the Allies before the First World War. There is no reason why the Chancellor of the Exchequer does not object, mainly because the government has no money and has no choice but to jump out. Moreover, he is also not optimistic about the combat effectiveness of the Serbian army. In the last war, the advantage was so obvious and it was defeated so badly. Now there is no advantage. Do you still need to consider it? Anyway, you can't beat it, so don't waste it. Alexander Obrenović also knew the state of the government, but the young and flamboyant king would not tolerate such a situation. The ministers are all Serbian elites, and they must be very clear. Although we can rely on Austria-Hungary now, there is also Russia behind Bulgaria. If a war breaks out under the mutual restraint of the two great powers, who can we rely on? Alexander Blyanovic's heartfelt rhetorical questions. But Your Majesty, the government has no money now. What are we going to use to expand the army? How much do we need to expand the army to deal with the threat from Bulgaria? Only the military can guarantee victory? The Minister of Finance asked sneeringly. Bulgaria has expanded by 60,000 people. If we want to maintain our advantage, we must expand at least 80,000 people to have the ability to attack. Minister of War Lyon said. This is impossible. This is equivalent to the size of our army has been expanded by 1.2 times, and with equipment, this is an astronomical figure, the Chancellor of the Exchequer said in disbelief. Not only him, but other Serbian executives were also forced to do so. Then everyone will not have to use it in the following days, and the financial revenue will be consumed by the army. Alexander Obrenović was also dumbfounded. He supported the expansion of the army, but he did not discount the government without money. The proportion of military expenditures in the Balkan countries has always been high, and Serbia is the best among them, but it is impossible to exceed fiscal revenue. The Minister of War seems to know that it seems to be too much, but he can't slap himself in the face. After thinking about it, I was ready to change the subject and said, if you don't have money, then increase the tax. How simple is this? I can't think of it. What does your Ministry of Finance do? The angry Minister of Finance rolled his eyes, looked at the Minister of War, and said nothing. It seems that again, if you think that this is a child playing a house, if you say tax increases, you will increase taxes, and the capitalists are not easy to mess with. The others didn't respond, but Alexander Obrenović took his heart and began to figure out how much tax he would need to raise to get enough money for the military. Don't be surprised. Historically, Alexander Obrenović was not a worry-free person, and he did a lot of absurd things. In 1900, he also married a widow 10 years older than him, court-maid Deleg Marsh, which caused the resignation of the entire cabinet and was ostracized by European aristocrats. Even more bizarre is that in 1903, Alexander Obrenović actually announced that he would stop enforcing the constitution for a few hours to facilitate his illegal activities. Compared with these, The tax increase is only a pediatric matter. Alexander Oblianovich seemed to realize that this kind of thing was beyond his ability, and asked, "The Ministry of Finance calculates how much tax will be levied to solve the financial crisis." Serbia is still discussing the types of taxes to be levied and the amount of the taxes. On the other side, Romania is much more relaxed. Karelai secretly formed an alliance with Germany and Austria in 1883. The alliance between Bulgaria and Russia was worried for a while, but after getting the guarantees of Germany and Austria-Hungary, he was relieved. Karelai had excellent military skills, and in the 10th Russo-Turkish War he commanded the army to win the Battle of Pleven. He has always had a soft spot for the army, and when he heard the Bulgarian expansion of the army, Karelai did not intend to lag behind, and followed the expansion of the army by 60,000. Romania is much richer than Serbia. Although there is a certain financial pressure, the military expenses are enough if the East and the West gather together. If it weren't for the limited political level of Karelai, the domestic search was too serious and unpopular. In 1888, the conflict intensified, and a peasant uprising broke out in Romania, which hurt the country's vitality. Now it is time for Ferdinand to have a headache. It stands to reason that the response of these neighbors is also normal. What are you worried about? Greece, and now it has no border with Bulgaria. But George I was so politically sensitive. He believed that Bulgaria's next target was the Ottoman Empire, so Greece should also prepare for war in advance. In spite of the opposition of the ministers, the military expansion bill was forcibly passed. Greece, with only 2 million people per person, actually had an army of 110,000 and a navy of 40,000 after the expansion of the army. Of course, the Greek government doesn't have that much money, but it's okay to borrow it. George I succeeded to the throne and the British gave him the Ionian Islands as a gift. Of course, the British were not so generous. At first, Prince Alfred, the second son of Queen Victoria, succeeded the King of Greece, but the Treaty of London in 1832 stipulated that Britain, Russia and France could not use their own royal family as the King of Greece. George I picked up a bargain. In the second half of the 19th century, Greece began to lay railways and dig the Isthmus of Corinth Canal, began to borrow a lot of debt and import light industrial products. The foreign debt reached more than 700 million drachma. The government was unable to repay, and Prime Minister Trikoupis was forced to declare the country bankrupt. In 1898, Britain, France, Austria, Germany, Russia and other countries formed the International Financial Committee to supervise Greece's fiscal revenue and expenditure, and the fiscal power fell into the hands of foreign powers. So now it doesn't matter if you borrow a little more to expand the army. The big deal is to go bankrupt early. The Greeks are used to debt, which can be regarded as a fine tradition. As for the future kingdom of Montenegro, ignore him. It is still a small country with a population of less than 400,000 people. It is really more than enough to expand the military and prepare for war, but he still expands the army to 15,000 people. Seeing the reactions of the Balkan countries, Ferdinand almost went crazy, and the arms race started. In a few months, when the economic crisis spreads to the Balkans, it will be fun to watch. Chapter 77, Expansion of the Army, Assassination. As soon as Bulgaria announced the expansion of the army, the recruitment office was full of people, and even the streets were lined up with neat registration teams, and the people enthusiastically joined the army. Well, the above is the content of official Bulgarian propaganda. The recruiting office was indeed packed, and the line was indeed lined up on the street. As for whether the people actively joined the army, it is difficult to say, because Bulgaria adopts a compulsory military service system. Every conscription has to come like this. Bulgaria's finances are not that rich either. Although it has increased a lot compared to before, the fiscal revenue in 1891 was as high as 130 million leva, but with the 5-year plan as a gold-sinking beast, there is still no surplus. Therefore, although 60,000 troops were recruited this time, the budget for weapons and equipment was not much. Ferdinand planned to change his clothes on a large scale after the military reform, and the eliminated weapons were just for recruits. Since the fall of Stam's cabinet, in order to maintain stability, Ferdinand has not made a big move against the army. Just use the guards to cultivate cronies, silently reserve talents, and at most use the communication between soldiers to subtly influence the army. With the army nearly doubling in size at one time, a massive personnel move is certainly justified. Then many people in the Bulgarian army were promoted, and the original small group was dismantled all at once. Even if someone wants to object, it can't stop his subordinates from being promoted. It turned out that there were only so many positions in the army, so naturally the promotion had to go out, and Ferdinand's long-trained cronies also took the opportunity to put them in. This is just the beginning. Ferdinand, who is familiar with the importance of the barrel of a gun, after completing the adjustment of the middle and lower level officers, came to the bottom of the salaries again, and established the Bulgarian Military Commission to be responsible for army construction and foreign wars. Collective promotion. Ferdinand put down a combination of punches, and the senior officials of the original army suddenly left the front line, nominally improving everyone's status, and only needed to be accountable to the king, and became a parallel organization with the cabinet. Savimatkharov has been in a bad mood recently. He was hesitant when facing Ferdinand's win, and he didn't stand in line for the first time, although he chose to support Ferdinand in the end. Who knew Stam's government was over so quickly, and his efforts did not play a big role. After the establishment of the new government, in order to stabilize Savimatkharov, it was still reused, and finally he was promoted to the Minister of War, which can be described as a spring breeze. However, Savimatkharov's political thinking is not so sensitive, and he did a stupid thing not long ago, against military reform. There was a lot of overlap in the powers of the military council formed by Ferdinand and the Minister of War. More importantly, Savimatkharov is now just an ordinary member of the military council, and has not served as the chairman. In hindsight, Savimatkharov also knew that he had been put on the air. The members of the military committee are all bigwigs of the Bulgarian military. Now everyone has the same powers, who will listen to him. In this reform, there are many frustrated people like Savimatkharov, but they can't do anything but vent on their own. As for the coup, their influence in the military has been weakened to the lowest point. In this personnel transfer, almost all officers at the company level and above were reversed. Besides, Ferdinand didn't kill all of them again. Isn't everyone promoted? If someone is down, someone is proud, and Stefan Tashev is very proud now, due to the butterfly effect of Ferdinand's expansion of the guards. He joined it. With his extraordinary ability, he was promoted to the head of the regiment a year ago, commander of the 8th Army Division. There are many such cases. After the reform of the military system, Ferdinand was equipped with 2 deputy officers as reserve officers in addition to the main post. With the big military expansion, the demand for officers is several times the original. If you can't be promoted under this background, then there will be problems. Of course Ferdinand doesn't have the energy to pay attention to these little things right now. An important historical event broke out, the assassination of Crown Prince Nicholas in Japan. Originally thought that Nicholas was delayed in Bulgaria for a short time, and his visit to Japan was postponed, so that the assassination would not happen, and Ferdinand did not pay attention. Unexpectedly, Nicholas too went to Japan more than a month later than in history, but this unfortunate child still did not escape the knife. It can only be said that Japan's ability to do death is really great. To assassinate the Russian crown prince, it is fortunate that it did not succeed, or else it will go to war with Russia immediately. The Sino-Japanese War has not yet erupted, and the Big Apple has not yet received indemnities for great development. In this era, Japan, which is still poor, is facing democracy in its heyday. Think about it and you will know the ending. No matter how ye Ferdinand is, the news all over the world is frying. Political assassination has always been a taboo. If the Japanese dare to assassinate the Russian crown prince, no matter whether it has anything to do with the government, don't even think about it. Isn't Bulgaria an ally with Russia? Ferdinand, who didn't care about little Japan in his previous life, would of course be in trouble. Decisively signaled the domestic media to wave the flag and shout. Not only that, but also instructed FU to guide the domestic public opinion in Russia, and also came up with a theory that if you don't beat Japan, you are a traitor. Anyway, don't hit me at this moment. It is politically correct to avenge Crown Prince Nicholas. Everyone is scolding the Japanese. This is not the end. Ferdinand also pretended to send a telegram to express his concern, and by the way, he also asked, when are you going to beat up the Japanese? Do you need help? Obviously, Ferdinand is looking for excitement. Could Russia go to war with Japan now? If it is not Alexander III who is in power, that is really uncertain. It is now clear that Alexander III had no intention of going to war, otherwise Russia would have to prepare. As far away as Japan, Crown Prince Nicholas is really angry now. He just came out and traveled around, in which country he was not well entertained, but when he came to Japan, assassins appeared. Now send a few officials here to apologize, and this is the end? It's a good idea. Anyway, if the assassins got into the crowd, it means that you have not done a good job in security work. You must be responsible. Even if you apologize, the emperor will come over in person. After checking the injury from the hospital, Nikolai ignored any diplomatic etiquette and went home directly, ignoring the current feelings of the Japanese. Crown Prince Nicholas, who had just left Japan, received a telegram from Ferdinand, and the suppressed anger came up again. He tore up the telegram and cursed, "You think I don't want to start a war? I want to beat him now, but I don't think so." After some time, the British began to mediate, and Ferdinand felt that it seemed too cheap to let Japan pass the border. As soon as I had an idea, I thought about it again, and immediately sent another telegram to Crown Prince Nicholas. This time Nicholas was in a much better mood, and Ferdinand's idea this time was much more reliable. That's right, it is to ask the Japanese government to lose money. It's not too much to ask for compensation for being injured. After all, he is also the Crown Prince of the Russian Empire, and he must have a compensation worthy of his identity. This is justified everywhere. Even if the Japanese government has reached an agreement with Russia under the mediation of the British, it cannot deny Nikolai's right to claim. This time, the Japanese were very happy, and publicly expressed their willingness to compensate in the newspaper. Ferdinand said he on the side, what is the compensation worthy of identity? Ferdinand's suggestion was £100 million. No matter how much the Japanese could give, at least this figure made Nikolai happy. Ferdinand's flattery was good, and it also meant that the Japanese government was in trouble, because no matter how much they gave later, Nicholas would not be satisfied, and £100 million was absolutely impossible. Chapter 78, Interim Economic Policy. The future Nicholas II and the Japanese are bad things. Ferdinand can't control it, and he will forget about it after lighting a fire. Due to Ferdinand's early warning of the economic crisis, the Bulgarian government specially sent people to monitor the financial market, and now some economists have noticed the crisis. Ferdinand did not expect that the economic crisis would spread to Bulgaria so quickly. According to economists' expectations, the crisis should have spread to the Balkans by the end of 1892. The response plans made before were all prepared in accordance with the economic crisis that broke out at the end of this year, which cannot be ignored by Ferdinand. As a financial novice, Ferdinand can only choose to listen to experts. As for the other travelers who made a fortune through the economic crisis, Ferdinand said, without the aura of the protagonist, they would not dare to die. At the end of the 19th century, it was a paradise for monopoly, and the economy of all Europe was controlled by large and small conglomerates. If you want to make a big deal in the stock market, people can modify the rules in minutes and ask you to lose money. Of course, there are no big moves, but there are still a lot of small moves. No matter how Ferdinand is also a member of the rule makers, it is still possible to get a piece of the pie. The most loyal butler Karl, this time took on the heavy responsibility and went to Germany, where the crisis first broke out. Ferdinand is not good at doing finance, but it is easy to buy a bargain. Buying a bankrupt company at a cabbage price can still be done without technical content. How is the harvest? Ferdinand has no energy to care, and now he has to deal with the economic crisis in Bulgaria. The royal palace of Sofia, and now the Bulgarian government is gathered together, one by one, all of them are frowning, What a terrible word, economic crisis. Especially Chekhov, who has just returned from abroad as a diplomatic representative, has seen the tragic situation in Germany's economic crisis. Tens of thousands of factories have gone bankrupt, and nearly 10 million unemployed people. There are human tragedies happening every day. Ferdinand was the calmest one. He knew that in this economic crisis, the damage to the vast colonies of Britain and France was not serious. Russia's industrial backwardness itself did not break out an economic crisis. This means that the economic crisis is not global, so the crisis in the Balkans is mainly influenced by Germany. Gentlemen, cheer up. On the issue of the economic crisis, let's listen to the opinions of experts from Ren first. Ferdinand said confidently. Reinhold, an Austrian, one of the well-known economists in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was dug up by Ferdinand at a great cost, and this time it was he who asserted that the economic crisis had spread to Bulgaria. As soon as Ferdinand finished speaking, Reinhold said without courtesy, "This economic crisis was initially caused by Germany, mainly because capitalists blindly invested in railways, and the repeated construction of railways in many areas exceeded the market demand. The German railway bubble burst in 1890. Then the stock market plummeted. Since then, the stock price has continued to fall. A large number of companies have gone bankrupt, and they have just encountered a lack of food harvesting, which has aggravated the crisis. After the economic crisis broke out, in order to survive, German companies urgently needed to seek out markets, and there are now signs that they are eyeing Bulgaria. But this question is a bit strange. Under normal circumstances, regions with backward economies and limited markets like the Balkans should be the last choice." After speaking, Reinhold still had a puzzled expression and was surprised by the performance of the German capitalists. However, Chekhov's face is ashen now, and the co-authorship of the crisis is also related to his visit. At that time, Germany was in an economic crisis, and many industrial products were sold with tears. Of course, the delegation bought and bought. Obviously, the big purchase of the delegation attracted the attention of German capitalists. Now that it has happened, it is too late to regret it. Ferdinand saw that everyone's expressions were a little weird, and said with a wry smile, "Okay, things have happened, and our strategic goal has been achieved. Now let's find a way to deal with the next crisis." Mr. Ryan, I wonder what the worst would be if the economic crisis hits full-blown? Reinhold thought for a while and said, "Your Excellency, the Grand Duke, Germany is a big industrial country. If we do not take measures, the domestic processing and manufacturing industry will face brutal competition. Moreover, the financial market will affect each other, and this crisis will definitely spread to other countries. The worst we could possibly face is dumping by big powers." Trent didn't say the result, but after analyzing the situation, everyone understood. This time, Bulgaria's processing and manufacturing industry is going to be in bad luck. So what can we do now? Is the government going to pay to bail out the market? Prime Minister Konstantin asked. Uncertainly issued an economic crisis warning to let the capitalists prepare to reduce production, but it is forbidden to lay off employees. If a company wants to lay off employees, the company must first file for bankruptcy, and all shareholders of the company are not allowed to engage in this industry in the future. Ferdinand said coldly. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This is to cut the flesh of the capitalists. However, this is also the best way to maintain social stability and the most effective way. It is estimated that the Bulgarian government dared to do this. If it were other countries, the capitalists would have fallen out. In fact, the Constantines are also very puzzled why the big capitalists in Bulgaria are very disciplined, and the laws issued by the government have always been cooperative and never contradicted. Basically, it is the small capitalists who commit crimes. The mercenary capitalists of other countries are not creatures at all. Can't figure it out. They can only be attributed to simple folk customs, strong patriotism, and know the overall situation. Only Ferdinand knew that it was his own vest, and of course he would not come out and sing opposite him. Your Excellency the Grand Duke, in addition to this, can we take financial control to limit the outflow of funds? Constantine took Ferdinand's words. Yes. In addition, We can also start some government projects in advance to absorb the unemployed. And during the economic crisis, we can try to dig a group of engineers from abroad. Ferdinand thought for a while and said ... Then in just a few hours of discussion, the Bulgarian government came up with a set of temporary economic policies, ready to be activated. Ferdinand still has some self-knowledge. Although many measures are copied from later generations, he still has no idea whether it will work or not. He asked, "Mr. Wren, you are an economic expert, how feasible do you think our strategy is?" After listening to the discussion, Reinhold was stunned. He dared to think about these measures. Did all the capitalists in Bulgaria change to vegetarianism? Hearing Ferdinand's question, he hesitated for a moment before he reacted, and then he reminded politely, "Your Excellency, these measures are theoretically feasible, but they seriously damage the interests of the capitalists, cause trouble." Ferdinand smiled and said, "As long as it is feasible, the capitalists in Bulgaria are of high quality, and they will take care of the overall situation. Our government will also explain in the newspapers. I believe they will understand." Reinhold was a little dumbfounded when he heard Ferdinand's explanation. Could it be that the Grand Duke is so naive to believe that the capitalists will sacrifice their own interests for the sake of the overall situation? No, you have to find a way to stop it, otherwise it will spread out and let people know that I participated in the formulation, and the fame of my life will not be destroyed. Then he turned his eyes to the cabinet for help, and everyone showed an expression of approval. Wren was puzzled. Were the senior members of the Bulgarian government going crazy? Or is the quality of Bulgarian capitalists really so high? Chapter 79. The outbreak of the economic crisis. The economic crisis is imminent, and Ferdinand knows that the Balkan countries are similar, and they are so powerless in the face of dumping by foreign powers. As for tariff barriers, this thing is indeed a good medicine for countries with rich resources and huge markets. But for the small Balkan states of the 19th century, it was a complete dose of arsenic. Taking Bulgaria as an example, a large part of industrial raw materials need to be imported, and it is heavily dependent on the international market for the large foreign exchange earnings or the export of agricultural products. Bulgaria is not bad, at least with the efforts of Ferdinand. Some industrial foundations have been laid. The biggest capitalist is Ferdinand himself, followed by the Bulgarian government, which has the strength to fight and will not shake its foundation. The previous food safety law has now become a weapon to stabilize the market. At least now the food sold internationally is basically unable to be sold on the market, and the domestic food industry has stabilized. For example, Greece and Serbia are miserable, their debts are high, and their national sovereignty has long been mortgaged. The national bourgeoisie in the country has not yet developed and is helpless in the face of the economic crisis. Combining history, Ferdinand couldn't help but conjecture maliciously, Germany's allies in the Balkans almost jumped back during World War I, fearing that they would be exploited badly in this economic crisis. Ferdinand had been prepared for a long time, and the first thing he did was to remove the inventory. All the companies under his company began to clear the inventory. Regardless of whether it is 3, 7 or 21, the goods are first changed to trademarks, and they are respectively marked with the vests of the British, French, German, Russian and Austrian companies that have been prepared in advance, and then shipped to the Balkan countries. Ferdinand doesn't care about profits now. In short, it is important to realize cash first. In the economic crisis, cash has always been king. Taking advantage of the eve of the economic crisis, Ferdinand put a lot of goods on the markets of Ottoman, Romania, Serbia, Greece and other countries. International capitalists had now started dumping into the Balkans, and Ferdinand's sudden blow was clearly beyond the capacity of the market. And then in May 1892, the Balkans' economic crisis broke out. In Bulgaria, since Ferdinand was well prepared, and he is the largest retailer, no matter how cheap foreign goods are, they should give priority to their own products. Not to mention the government, procurement is basically monopolized by Ferdinand's industries, and in order to protect the national industry, it must continue to be used. The key is that the big Bulgarian companies are not listed companies, and even the Bulgarian stock market has been shut down because of the depression. This guy wants to shear wool, but he can't do it. In public opinion, the media led by Bulgaria Daily are all advocating the use of domestic products without money. It also directly linked employment with the use of domestic products, and instilled in everyone that if foreign products were used, domestic companies would go bankrupt and everyone would lose their jobs. The radical ones shouted, "Not using domestic products is the slogan of traitors." In addition, in recent years, the government has promulgated labor laws. Under the leadership of Ferdinand's companies, the quality of Bulgarian capitalists has been forced to improve, and everyone's life is not bad. Therefore, foreign goods led by Germany, although they are good and cheap, their sales volume is not large. People don't buy it. It can't be forced. Forced to be helpless, the capitalists can only turn their attention to other places. Simply the Bulgarian market is so big, and there is little loss if you give up. Then, the Ottoman Empire became the biggest victim. There is no way who can call him the biggest. The market of a country is bigger than that of all the small Balkan countries combined. Of course, it is the first goal. First, the financial markets were attacked and the stock market wailed. Next, it hit the real industry again. Fortunately, the Ottoman Empire's industry is backward, otherwise it might be a play this time. Then came Greece, Serbia, Romania and other small countries, which were directly cultivated by international capital, leaving a mess. International capital has withdrawn. You think this is over? On the contrary, this is just the beginning. The budding industries of the Balkan countries were directly destroyed. A large number of unemployed people were born, government revenue fell sharply, and domestic conflicts began to intensify. Historically, the economic crisis only reached the Balkans in 1893, when it was nearing its end, and the losses were not so great. Even so, the Balkan countries were hurt. For the next decade or so, countries were busy dealing with internal conflicts and recovering. It's the same abroad. Ferdinand has no time to take care of it now, but Bulgaria, the country that suffered the least damage in the economic crisis, is also mourning now. At the same time, the economic crisis broke out in the Balkans. Bulgaria's exports were hit hard, and orders dropped sharply. For enterprises engaged in export processing, the cold winter has come. Even if there is a Russian market, it is not within the reach of these small capitalists. The Ministry of Industry estimates that if the economic crisis ended at the end of 1892, the number of Bulgarian enterprises would be reduced by 1/5. If the economic crisis continued until the end of 1893, the number of Bulgarian enterprises would decrease, cut in half. It is gratifying that most of these eliminated enterprises are family-style workshops with small-scale and backward management. Even if it accounts for half of the total number, it is less than 5% of the total economic output. According to estimates by the Ministry of Finance, in the second half of 1892, Bulgaria's fiscal revenue fell by a third compared with the same period of the previous year. This also meant that in 1892 Bulgaria would face a severe fiscal deficit. The second five-year plan has already started, and the government's previous loans and home rating income have all been invested in it, which is not enough. Originally, Bulgaria's fiscal revenue was growing rapidly, and the fiscal revenue of the next few years was taken into account, and it was barely able to get together. Now that the economic crisis has broken out, foreign exports have been sluggish, and fiscal revenue has dropped sharply. More importantly, the second five-year plan cannot be stopped now. Once it is stopped, a large number of unemployed people will increase in the country, which will be another blow to the recovering Bulgaria. But now Ferdinand is miserable and happy. On the one hand, the Bulgarian country suffered heavy losses and faced a financial crisis, which made him a big headache. On the other hand, he made a lot of money from this economic crisis. Not to mention it in the stock market, but also to eat some leftovers. However, when it comes to bargain hunting, it is quite profitable, and it is difficult to calculate the specific value of acquiring a batch of potential companies. Ferdinand was worrying about the finances of Bulgaria, and Franz hurried over and suggested, "Your Excellency the Grand Duke, we can set up a bank in Bulgaria." After the outbreak of the economic crisis, there was a run on the Winston Bank in Hungary, and there are other. The bank risk is too great, and having your own bank is also convenient for foreign exchange. Ferdinand's eyes lit up. How could he forget such an important thing? Now Bulgaria does not have a decent bank except the Bulgarian National Bank, and most of the financial business is still done by foreign banks. If you don't step on it, how can you be worthy of your identity as a transmigrator? Chapter 80. Is it hard to open a bank? There is no doubt that it is really difficult. In addition to capital, reform requires a lot of financial talents. But for Ferdinand, all this is very simple. There are many bankrupt banks in the economic crisis. It is not easy to poach people, or to acquire a small bank for reorganization is not a problem. By setting up a bank, you can use it for your own convenience, and it can also solve the financial crisis in Bulgaria. In the future, it is a big deal to manipulate loans to the government behind the scenes, and by the way, you will make a lot of money. The more Ferdinand thought about it, the better, but Alice interrupted his good mood soon. A big man he didn't want to face, but had to face, came. His mother, Princess Clementine, had been killed from Vienna. Since Ferdinand became Archduke of Bulgaria, Princess Clementina mainly lived in Vienna and had much less contact with each other. You can see each other a few times a year, but that doesn't mean Ferdinand can ignore Princess Clementine. In fact, Ferdinand still respected Princess Clementine very much, and basically would not fight against her. But there is one exception, which is lifelong events. I had met a lot of noble ladies in Vienna before, but Ferdinand didn't have much interest. Of course, he was not very old at that time, and European aristocrats were used to marrying later, so he was not under much pressure. After becoming the king of Bulgaria, his marriage was not so easy, which also involved political influence. Then it was delayed, and Princess Clementine was worried about this matter a lot, and ended a few times for Ferdinand, but he was pushed by him as being politically unsuitable. This time when Princess Clementine came over, Ferdinand was already guilty and thought to himself, I can just compromise and find someone who can handle it. Save yourself the trouble. Anyway, in this position, you are already destined to get rid of political marriage, and don't expect to find any love. After pondering for a while, seeing that Ferranti was still there, Ferdinand sorted out his thoughts, and now he was not in the mood to handle official business, and said, Mister, it is possible to build a new one, and it is best to complete it within the year. Okay, Your Excellency, I will get it done as soon as possible. Franz said indifferently. Ferdinand nodded. There is no doubt about Franz's ability. After years of training with him, his potential has been stimulated, and he is definitely the top talent in this era. Loyalty can also be guaranteed. It has passed the test of Ferdinand, and the whole family is living with the Hegemony family, and the possibility of betrayal is almost zero. Ferdinand is very fortunate that he was born into a big family, and he has enough background in terms of personal connections and talent reserves. If you really started from scratch, it is estimated that you will have to worry about your livelihood now. Time flies. Princess Clementina has entered Bulgaria, but she is not in a hurry to find Ferdinand's bad luck. Bulgaria deserves to be God's back garden. Now is the season for roses to bloom. Princess Clementine walked all the way admiring the scenery, and she could see that she was in a good mood. She didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. Originally entering Bulgaria, it took less than a day to reach Sofia by train, but Princess Clementina dragged her for 5 days. Seeing Princess Clementine's performance, Ferdinand knew that he was in trouble, and this time he probably couldn't avoid it. Now I just hope that the noble lady this time will not be too scary. In fact, since Ferdinand succeeded him as Archduke of Bulgaria, Princess Clementina has hardly been involved in his affairs, and his marriage has occurred. Pity the hearts of parents all over the world. It seems that every time Princess Clementina comes here, it is for this matter. Basically, the more satisfied she is, the more leisurely she can walk. Still enjoying it. Judging from the performance of Princess Clementina, Ferdinand has already determined which kingdom is the princess. If it is just the daughter of an ordinary noble, it is usually a telegram first, followed by a stack of documents. As soon as Ferdinand refuses, he will come over immediately. Princess Clementine became more and more like a little urchin as she got older, and now it seems that molesting Ferdinand has become a constant pleasure in her life. This time is no exception. Princess Clementina quietly entered the palace, blocked the maid who wanted to report the letter, and suddenly appeared in front of Ferdinand. Ferdinand, who was handling official business, was taken aback. Without waiting for Ferdinand to speak, Princess Clementine said first, "Why doesn't Ferdinand welcome me? Poor people came to see you from Vienna day and night, and you actually ... Ferdinand's heart is already a group of grass and mud horses running wild. Is it really good to act like a spoiled child to your son? Could it be that when women get older and enter menopause, their thinking will be different from ordinary people? I have never heard of such a state of menopause in my previous life." Well, Ferdinand admitted that he was an orphan in his previous life, and he really didn't care much about this. Hastily said, "How can it be? Clementine, you are my most respected mother, how can I not welcome you?" "Really? That's great. By the way, I forgot to ask, how many mothers do you have in total?" Princess Clementina said solemnly. Ferdinand was stunned. "There is such an operation?" Seemingly satisfied with Ferdinand's performance, Princess Clementine snorted, "Ha ha ha ha," laughing and bending over. She said after a while, "Does Ferdinand know? Your expression just now was so funny, just like when you were a kid." Looking at the maids around who wanted to laugh but didn't dare to laugh, Ferdinand wanted to cry but had no tears. It seemed that Princess Clementine had had enough, and let Ferdinand go. "By the way, I handed him an invitation letter, inviting him to St. Petersburg to attend the ball of the Grand Duchess Xenia." No matter how slow the reaction was, Ferdinand knew what was going on. Under normal circumstances, who would travel thousands of miles to invite someone to a dance? In the 19th century and not the 21st century, it only took a few hours to fly from Bulgaria to St. Petersburg, but now it takes more than half a month to travel by carriage and train. Ferdinand knew that it was not his turn to refuse this time. His mother, Princess Clementine, was probably ready. As the last known party, she could only accept it. Ferdinand rummaged through his memory, and his impression of the Grand Duchess was that the original owner was still a cute little girl, whom he had met more than 10 years ago. The Grand Duchess of Xenia has written very little in history, and Ferdinand, a hardcore history lover, didn't know her at all, except that she was the daughter of Alexander III. Chapter 81. This sudden marriage was beyond people's expectations, but also within reason. European aristocrats marry, pay attention to matching families, and attach great importance to blood. In this way, the range of options is already small, and if political factors are considered, the choice will become narrower. Historically, the original owner, Ferdinand, would not delay until 1893 when he married Princess Maria Luisa of Bourbon-Parma, daughter of Roberto I, Duke of Parma, and Princess Maria Pia of Bourbon to Sicilies. In 1894, the Grand Duchess of Xenia married her cousin, Grand Duke Alexander, in a hurry in order not to destroy the noble bloodline. There is also an unreliable speculation that Alexander III was already sick and dying at the time, so he hurriedly married his daughter. This world is no exception. Ferdinand's lifelong affairs have been delayed. Although Princess Clementina has made a lot of claims before, she finally gave up. The Saxe-Coburg-Gotha-Coeli family you can't lose face. Ferdinand's marriage is not only a personal issue, but also involves the honor of the family. If there is no suitable candidate, it will wait. Many big European aristocrats come here. It's not that they don't want to get married sooner, the problem is that the choice is too narrow, and the ancestry factor in this regard is more important than politics. The situation of the Grand Duchess of Xenia is similar. Historically, due to the poor diplomatic relations between Bulgaria and Russia at that time, the two were naturally not considered. After Ferdinand crossed, the relationship between the two countries has improved under the butterfly effect, and each other has come into sight. The relationship between European aristocrats is intricate, and almost all major aristocrats have marriages. For example, the wife of Ferdinand's cousin Edward VII, and the queen of Alexander III, Maria Fyodorovna, are sisters. Not only that, anyway, the marriages between the European nobles are a mess. Ferdinand also knew that his mother, Princess Clementine, who was also a cousin of the French princess and Queen Maria Fyodorovna, had a good relationship with each other, and then hooked up naturally. I'm sorry for the seniority, The author doesn't know how to calculate it. 3 or 4 different answers are not enough, and it's okay to push a few more generations to get more than a dozen answers. The two sides are well matched, and they are now political allies. Under normal circumstances, it can be finalized only after Ferdinand St. Petersburg and his party. Well, these are not in a hurry. Ferdinand has to solve domestic problems now. There are still a lot of troubles in Bulgaria. The economic crisis has been detonated ahead of time, and the government has taken measures to deal with it. Although the destructive power has been weakened, the aftermath is still indispensable. Compared with the situation in the Balkan countries, Ferdinand is still very fortunate. Bulgaria was a Russian sphere of influence until 1886, when Russian capital dominated. But after the Stam government period, the relationship between Russia and Bulgaria broke down, and even severed diplomatic relations, and began to introduce large-scale British, Austrian, Hungarian and German capital to frantically suppress Russian capital. This is too exaggerated to be used in Bulgaria. Small Bulgaria can't attract the peeps of capital predators, that is, a few bank offices plus a group of compradors. The comprador had already been killed by Ferdinand by borrowing a knife. Oh, and the fish that slipped through the net are busy turning the case over. It is a pity that Bulgaria is now a legalized society. Unless you can provide evidence that you have been wronged, it cannot be overturned. Since Ferdinand announced his vindication, there have been very few exceptions that have died, and the rest have been vindicated. As for the return of assets, bring evidence. At that time, the accounts of the home were destroyed by accident. So far, in addition to returning a few properties, the rest of the assets go to the Stam government to prove it. Do you want to make a comeback without money? It is true that the rising star capitalists who were whipped by Ferdinand were vegetarians, can't even handle a few trash fish. However, banks are disgusting. The loans of previous governments have successively mortgaged a lot of sovereigns. Now that the economic crisis has broken out, major banks are shrinking their funds to cope with the possible run on their own countries. If Ferdinand didn't take the opportunity to fall to the ground, he would have traveled in vain. The major powers have always been the focus of the intelligence department, and now it's FU's turn to perform. Ferdinand has always believed in, eat every bite of rice. Due to geopolitics, Bulgaria's financial capital is currently led by Britain and Austria, followed by Russia. Forgive them. Given Russia's poor financial conditions, it would be good to be able to maintain its influence. Is it still short of money? Germany has just entered the market. During the Stam government, Bulgarian customs duties were mortgaged to the British, and most of the mineral resources were mortgaged to Austro-Hungary. This multiple-choice question is easy to do, and the persimmon is looking for a soft pinch. The current financial system of the British Empire cannot be shaken by a small economic crisis. In contrast, the financial system of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is much worse, and there are not enough colonies to discharge floods. Greater impact. Well, this time the opponent is much smaller, just a bank, Austro-Hungarian Bank. As you can tell from the name, this bank is not easy. The predecessor of Austrian Bank was the Austrian National Special Bank, which was established in 1816 and restructured into Austro-Hungary Bank in 1878. Don't get me wrong, it's still a private bank, and it became the Austrian state-owned bank after the disintegration of Austria-Hungary. In a secret room in Vienna, FU convened a meeting of several intelligence chiefs, which can also be said to assign tasks. Your mission this time is very simple. It is to spread the news that the Austro-Hungarian Bank is going to go bankrupt. This is information. There is truth or falsehood. You just declare it as true. FU. Soon, a street tabloid in Vienna published the news that 3 months ago the Austro-Hungarian Bank had provided a loan of 50 million kroner to the Serbian government. This news is true. However, the editor's bold speculation was added later. Serbia is about to go bankrupt in the economic crisis, and this loan may not be recovered. Immediately caused a sensation in Vienna. 50 million crowns is not a small sum, which is already close to Hungary's annual customs revenue. Everyone is talking about the bad luck of the Austro-Hungarian Bank, and such a huge sum of money is enough to make it hurt. However, This did not immediately arouse the concern of the senior executives of the Austro-Hungarian Bank. Yes, they issued a loan of 50 million kroner and named such fat cannot be swallowed by the Austro-Hungarian Bank alone. In fact, this loan was issued by a bank group. Moreover, the loans at that time were deducted with interest first, and then issued in batches, and only half of them have been issued now. In addition, a large part of this money was used by Serbia to purchase weapons and equipment in Austria-Hungary, and part of the funds returned. In fact, not much cash was released. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82, Rumors. Even if the loan is lost, it is within the scope of the Austro-Hungarian Bank. Besides, Serbia is also mortgaged, and the possibility of losing money is very low. It was also reported in newspapers before, and it also caused the citizens of Vienna to sigh that the bank is really rich. As for the subtle differences between the Austro-Hungarian Bank Group and the Austro-Hungarian Bank, few people paid attention. This time, Fuhu Chunkiu's brushwork has been used very successfully, blurring the concept. In addition, after the outbreak of the economic crisis, all kinds of gossip are flying all over the sky. If you really believe it, the sky will fall. Well, this is just the beginning. Just this uncertain news will not shake everyone's confidence in Austro-Hungarian Bank. A few days later, another tabloid in Vienna published the news. The Greek government suffered heavy losses after the economic outbreak. The government is about to face bankruptcy, and another loan from the Austro-Hungarian Bank may not be recovered. The amount of this loan is not that large. The total amount of 0 and 0 is only more than 20 million kroner. However, the problem this time is obviously much more serious. The Greek government is indeed on the verge of bankruptcy. Historically, the Greek government almost went bankrupt, but it was pulled by the foreign powers, and it was impossible to declare bankruptcy until 1898. The senior management of the Austro-Hungarian Bank is now meeting to discuss whether to save the Greek government or not. In fact, this issue does not need to be discussed. Due to political and economic considerations, it must also be rescued. The current Greek government and Germany and Austria are still very close, and even if Austria-Hungary did not participate, other powers would intervene. At the end of the 19th century, large international financial loans were all linked to politics, and the Austro-Hungarian Bank was no exception. Austro-Hungarian Bank's main discussion now is what to get next, and how to help the Greek government through the disaster. You must know that what the Greek government can mortgage is almost the same. The reason for financial bankruptcy in 1898 was because there was no collateral. This time, the Austro-Hungarian Bank's reaction was much more obvious. President Witos immediately held a press conference to refute the rumors and announced the principle of unanimity among the powers. The 5 hooligans in Europe will intervene, and everyone can rest assured and don't listen to rumors. The Greek government will not go bankrupt, and the most important thing is that the loans of the Austro-Hungarian banks will not go to waste. The news was really heartening, and Austro-Hungarian bank shares, which had been falling since the onset of the economic crisis, have rebounded. Witos is in a good mood now. To be honest, Austro-Hungarian Bank has developed very well under his helm, but the economic crisis broke out and all industries were affected. Austro-Hungarian Bank was no exception. The stock price began to fall, and he was under great pressure. Now that it's finally rebounding, does that mean this crisis is over? However, Fu did not let his good mood last long, and the Vienna Daily published another bad news. Something happened again in the Ottoman Empire. In fact, it is not a big deal. In the late 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was peaceful for a few days. What is a mere peasant uprising? Even if there are a little more people participating this time, it will not be suppressed soon. Besides, the Hardenberg family and the Ottomans are also old rivals for hundreds of years, and they really have little influence on Austria-Hungary. Well, the Austro-Hungarian Bank was hit again this time. In the chaos, Several employees were accidentally injured, and some property was lost along the way. The mere tens of thousands of kroner was not worth mentioning. But the power of the rumors is huge, and Fu happily magnified the amount hundreds of times and published it in a street tabloid. However, out of concern for the Ottoman Empire, the rumor spread quickly. Then the newspapers in Vienna followed up one after another, and the intelligence officers took a decisive rhythm, and everyone began to guess how much the Austro-Hungarian Bank lost this time. From millions to tens of millions, there are speculations, and there are different opinions. Some newspapers even boldly guessed that the Austro-Hungarian Bank had lost hundreds of millions in order to attract people's attention. Well, this kind of speculation of hundreds of millions is estimated to be believed by only idiots. President Vickers immediately held a press conference. The loss was announced in an attempt to reassure people. It was openly admitted that the Austro-Hungarian Bank was in trouble in the Ottomans, but the loss was only 80,000 crowns. This time it was obviously self-defeating, and the citizens of Vienna said, "I would be a fool to believe it." Who called the Austro-Hungarian Bank to show its strength and give people the feeling of being rich and powerful. According to the thinking of ordinary people, it is normal that the Austro-Hungarian Bank in the Ottoman Empire must have 1,800,000 children. How could it be possible to not lose 1,800,000 yuan if it was robbed and murdered? If Vickers knew what the people were thinking, he would definitely spit on them. The Austro-Hungarian Bank is very rich, but it is not so arrogant that it can put 8 million in a branch, and the Vienna headquarters is almost the same. People don't care so much, as long as they think it's reasonable. The Austro-Hungarian banks must have lost a lot, otherwise why would they hide their losses? People are unpredictable, and the more they think about it, the more terrifying it is. At this time, the intelligence personnel began to take the rhythm again. Vienna Street Lardy was an ordinary intelligence officer under Ferdinand, and of course he had no idea who he was working for. He is still very satisfied with this part-time job, usually go to work normally, and occasionally only need to spread a few messages. You can get rich rewards, easy and simple and not dangerous. As for who the employer is, he is too lazy to care. Anyway, you only need to talk about it. You can make money, and the above has specially organized training. In order to reduce the risk of exposure, dissemination of news is generally just guesswork. In his opinion, this is a lot. Who would pay attention to a small person like him? And so far, judging from the tasks he has received, Lardy believes that this is a capitalist dog bites a dog, and he is not tired of this kind of thing. Hi, Carlo. Have you deposited money in the Austro-Hungarian bank? A middle-aged man in his 40s who was slightly obese came over, and Ratty took the initiative to go over and say hello. Of course, Ratty, you know that the current economic environment is very bad, and those small banks may go bankrupt. The credit of Austro-Hungarian banks has always been very good. Although the interest rate is low, it is safe, Carlo said with a smile. God, haven't you watched the news? Austro-Hungarian banks' investments abroad have failed one after another, and they are about to go bankrupt. Ratty said in surprise. How is this possible? Austro-Hungarian bank is a big bank in the world. How can it go bankrupt with its strength? Carlo said in disbelief. How do I know if it goes bankrupt? Anyway, the Austro-Hungarian bank has suffered a lot of losses recently, and the newspapers have said it. It's not like you don't know the current situation in China. Every once in a while, there are factories closing down. Who knows how many bad debts the Austro-Hungarian bank has on hand? In a big family business, you can't stand such a toss. Ratty said lightly. That's what you said. The economy is really in a downturn right now, and the machinery factory where that kid Bolwo worked has gone bankrupt. I heard that he still owes a lot of money to the bank. Look at it this way. Do I need to hurry up and pay the money? Take it out. It's more secure. Carlo said hesitantly. I suggest you take it out. It's better to lose a little interest than to lose everything. Are there fewer banks in Vienna now? Who knows if the Austro-Hungarian bank can survive this time? This is a loss of tens of millions! Ratty continued to add. Well, I'm thinking about it, Carlo said with a painful face. The same thing happened more than once on the streets of Vienna. After many people were fooled, They consulted with their relatives and friends, which inadvertently affected more people. The rumors intensified, and a run on the bank broke out. Chapter 83. As soon as the run took place, it caused a sensation in Vienna and began to spread in all directions. The stock market reacted immediately, and Austro-Hungarian Bank's share price began to plummet. At this time, Vickers was in a hurry. No bank is not afraid of a run, especially in an economic crisis. Immediately, a general meeting of shareholders was held to seek help from the major shareholders behind the scenes. Vickers' decision is correct, and the shareholders behind the Austro-Hungarian Bank are all powerful and powerful people in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. As soon as these big men acted, the Austro-Hungarian government came forward to refute the rumors, guaranteed the Austro-Hungarian Bank, and Vickers borrowed a sum of funds from other colleagues for emergency. At the same time, they used the relationship, persuaded the good media, and started a public opinion offensive in an attempt to reverse the adverse impact. Austro-Hungarian Bank would have survived the crisis by now, if no one interfered. However, FU will definitely not give up. Ferdinand's purpose is to make the Austro-Hungarian Bank's vitality badly damaged, and it is best to go bankrupt directly. The biggest problem with the Austro-Hungarian Bank right now is credit. As long as the people continue to spread the bad news about the Austro-Hungarian Bank, no one can save it. At the end of the 19th century, government regulation of public opinion was minimal, and the freedom of the media was extremely high. FU still chooses the old method, with rhythm. For example, last month Danwyru, a textile factory, went bankrupt, and owed a loan to the Austro-Hungarian Bank, which became a bad debt. Also owed a loan from the Austro-Hungarian Bank, another bad debt, and so on. Reporting bad debts is a small problem. How can there be no bad debts in opening a bank? However, the specific amount is not mentioned, and it is all described as huge loan. The amount of this huge amount depends on the people's brains. For ordinary people, a loan of 10,000 kroner is also a huge amount, and a loan of 1 million kroner is still a huge amount. Any number is possible, and ordinary people make guesses based on what they think is reasonable. Then the more I thought about it, the more I felt that there was a problem with the Austro-Hungarian Bank. Recently, bad debts have always been reported. This is only made public. I don't know how many secretly there are. No, the Austro-Hungarian Bank is afraid that it is dangerous, and you have to withdraw the money quickly. The run crisis intensified. The current direction of public opinion in Vienna is very strange. Most of the mainstream media are calling on everyone to calm down and stand up for the Austro-Hungarian Bank, while other tabloids report the bad debts of the Austro-Hungarian Bank one after another, fighting each other. In general, Vickers' public relations were effective, and the Austro-Hungarian Bank gradually reversed the negative impact on public opinion, but the number of people who took money did increase. Vickers must not know that there is a kind of hype in the future. It does not need to show evidence to convince everyone. As long as some people doubt it, the goal can be achieved. There is a war of words between the media, and now the topic of the Austro-Hungarian Bank crisis has been copied, and it is difficult for ordinary people to distinguish between true and false. For the sake of safety, many people chose to withdraw money from Austro-Hungarian banks in advance, and seeing the crowd in the queue strengthened their determination, and then affected more people. Vickers panicked. The Austro-Hungarian bank run crisis broke out, and now millions of cash are being withdrawn every day, and the number is still increasing. Even some big customers are starting to wait and see, and once these people join in, then Austro-Hungarian Bank is really finished. Vickers decided to completely reverse public opinion. He is very aware of the shit and urine nature of newspapers, and no matter how they report it, it is for a word of money. There may be newspapers that really exist for the sake of justice, but they are not worth mentioning in the face of money. The Austro-Hungarian Bank has stepped up its money offensive, but VO will not sit still. Ferdinand's intelligence organization in Vienna was the first to operate, and its power is definitely not what it seems on the surface. Soon, FAO had evidence that the Austro-Hungarian bank had bought the newspaper. A picture of the money transaction between the Austro-Hungarian bank and the newspaper was published on the front page of the next day. There is also a small photo of a bullet attached to the photo, as well as the passionate explanation of the editors. Justice will not yield in front of money. Justice will not compromise with bullets. It is bound to expose the despicable methods of the Austro-Hungarian bank. There are pictures and the truth. This time, the reversal caused is much bigger. The people of the Austro-Hungarian Empire are angry, and they join in the denunciation of the Austro-Hungarian bank. Now it's too late for Vickers to do anything. The people all believe that there is a problem with the Austro-Hungarian bank. Otherwise, why would they spend money to buy off the newspaper, and why would they threaten people? Vickers wants to cry but has no tears now. That's right, he did it with money to bribe it. It's a very common thing. It's normal to bribe public opinion. But sending bullets, this kind of rubbish method really has nothing to do with him. It is not easy to deal with a street tabloid. Does it need to be taught? But now any explanation is futile. Except for the newspapers, they control themselves. Other Vienna media dare not speak for them anymore, which really affects their credibility. Vickers has not broken. In fact, there is no need to think of other ways now, and it is the right way to deal with the run crisis. As a qualified banker, Vickers knew that getting through this difficult time was a matter of money, and his top priority was to do his best to raise money. But another bad news came. Czech Bank went bankrupt. The rain is coming and the wind is filling the building. Although Czech Bank is not as good as Austro-Hungarian Bank, it can also be ranked in the top 10 of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Such a large bank is finished. On the eve of the financial crisis, Czech Bank was ambitious and aggressively expanded its financial territory. Then, the pace was too big, and it caught up with the financial crisis. Quietly transferred some high-quality assets, and then suddenly declared bankruptcy, giving another blow to the precarious Austro-Hungarian bank. The financial world of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is now in a state of turmoil, and the tide of runs has begun to spread. The people seemed to have lost confidence in the banks and took to the streets one after another, forming long queues. The Austro-Hungarian government could not sit still either, announcing that it would save the world, and asking for help from the German financial community. Bankers also began to rescue themselves. Vickers took the lead in announcing a moratorium on lending, and then began a tearful sale, selling the assets of Austro-Hungarian Bank to deal with the credit crisis. When Ferdinand in Bulgaria received the news, he knew it was almost time to close the net. The financial crisis of the Austro-Hungarian Empire was caused by the economic crisis that led to the lack of confidence in the bank. When the Austro-Hungarian government reacts, the crisis of joining the salvation will almost pass. Besides, it is impossible for Germany to watch the financial collapse of Austria-Hungary. The economic ties between Germany and Austria are very tight. Unless they feel that the economic crisis in Germany is not big enough, they must save Austria-Hungary. Chapter 84, Acquisition. Since the Austro-Hungarian Bank was selling with dares and Ferdinand had been planning for so long, how could he not take advantage of the fire? Under Ferdinand's advice, Franz proposed to Austro-Hungarian Bank the intention to acquire the Bulgarian branch. Not surprisingly, Vickers only hesitated for a few minutes before deciding to sell. At this time, it is important to save yourself first. As for whether it will reduce the influence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in Bulgaria, and not offend the Austro-Hungarian government, now it is too much to care about. The current situation has exceeded Ferdinand's most optimistic estimates. It is completely good. Many of the industries that he coveted in the Austro-Hungarian Empire can now be started. In this economic crisis, the bankers were full and choked. Of course, it's not obvious now. During the economic crisis, many assets depreciated. Once normalcy is restored, the situation will change. Now that the financial crisis has broken out, Austro-Hungarian banks have started tearing up and selling, and other banks are not doing much better. At the time of life and death, who cares whether it is a loss or not, or it is important to get rid of it as soon as possible. Raise funds first, get rid of the financial crisis, keep the core industry, banking, and then talk about future development. We all know that the more this is the case, the more difficult it is to sell at a good price, but there is no way that the long queue in front of the bank is still waiting for the rice to cook. The cautious Ferdinand knew that, in order to become the target of public criticism, Ferdinand's vests were dispatched one after another. Make a fortune. Now the Austro-Hungarian Bank is in desperate need of cash, and after reporting to Vickers for approval, the negotiations with Ferenc went very smoothly, and it took less than 3 days to finalize the deal. Although the two sides have a big gap in the valuation of the Bulgarian branch of the Austro-Hungarian Bank, the Austro-Hungarian Bank's own valuation is 150 million levs, and the valuation of Ferenc is only 50 million levs. The same offer was only 50 million, and they refused to bargain. This condition is already excessive, but now the Austro-Hungarian Bank cannot afford to delay, because there is a long queue of withdrawals outside the Bulgarian branch, and the branch's inventory funds can only support 2 days at most. I can't blame Ferdinand for being mean. In this age, if you don't use any means, you're a fool. If it weren't for the fear of pressing the Austro-Hungarian Bank, the other party directly transferred the branch to other powers, and Ferdinand's 50 million yuan would not be released, and the other party would go bankrupt in the run. After a day of talks to no avail, the head of the Bulgarian branch of Austro-Hungarian Bank directly reported the situation to Vickers. Ferdinand was the only one who took advantage of the situation. The Austro-Hungarian Bank's assets in many places were underestimated. No matter how good everyone's relationship was, at this moment they were able to slaughter an eye for a knife, and they didn't show any mercy to him. In the past few days, Vickers does not know how many things have been smashed, and his office has been changed several times. He gritted his teeth fiercely, greeted Ferdinand's family and even his ancestors in his heart, and finally decided to sell it reluctantly. It's not that Vickers couldn't find a buyer. Both German and British banks were interested in the asset. However, the Bulgarian branch of Austro-Hungarian Bank could not hold on. In order to ensure the smooth progress of the acquisition, the Bulgarian branches of several other foreign banks were also involved in large or small runs, and no one dared to act rashly. There is no doubt that who else but Ferdinand would dare to do things so recklessly in Bulgaria. Once Austro-Hungarian Bank Bulgaria is run on bankruptcy, there is no doubt that the Bulgarian government will definitely let it go into bankruptcy and liquidation directly, and Austro-Hungarian Bank may lose everything. If it was before, Vickers could have used the Austro-Hungarian Empire to put pressure on Bulgaria, so that Bulgaria did not dare to act rashly, but after the alliance between Russia and Bulgaria, all this has changed. With the terrible relationship between Austria-Hungary and Russia, needless to say, this is now, and the international situation is like this. Ferdinand paid for it in a regular manner. If it is put on hold in 20 years, the two groups are already opposed, and he can swallow it directly. Next, it's easy to say, Ferdinand is clear about the Austro-Hungarian Bank's family in Bulgaria. As soon as the contract was signed, Ferdinand paid quickly, and immediately sent someone to take over the assets of the Austro-Hungarian Bank in Bulgaria. In fact, in order to complete the acquisition, Ferdinand began to raise funds long before the economic crisis, about 50 million lev and 20 million pounds, which was a huge sum of money at the time. Even if Ferdinand has been working hard to make money after crossing the border, he can only get half of it without affecting other industries. Of course, if there is no money, it is a loan. Ferdinand has collateral, and his repayment ability is obvious to all. He is a proper high-quality customer. Then Ferdinand began to loan, and loaned more than 20 million pounds from major European banks. Obviously, Ferdinand was planning to play a big game, including the Austro-Hungarian Bank. I wonder if Vickers would be pissed when he heard the news. To this end, Ferdinand now has to repay more than 1.2 million pounds in interest every year. However, the business was still very profitable, and the debt of the Bulgarian government transferred from the Austro-Hungarian Bank was enough to recover the cost. Previously, the Bulgarian government owed the Austro-Hungarian Bank a total of more than 58 million lev loans. The annual interest payment is as high as more than 4 million levs. or about £1.8 million. After changing hands, Ferdinand earned nearly £600,000 a year. Not to mention the other assets of Austro-Hungarian Bank in Bulgaria, which add up to an absolutely astronomical sum. In fact, the Austro-Hungarian Bank's previous valuation of 150 million levs was not unfounded. In addition to government loans, it also held more than half of Bulgaria's minerals. Although Bulgaria's mineral resources are barren, they add up to nothing. A small number. Looking at the list of statistics, Ferdinand sighed with emotion. Sure enough, it's better to take advantage of the fire and make a fortune. The Austro-Hungarian Bank is also really good. Such a large loan was swallowed by their family, and they deserved their bad luck. With such a large investment overseas, it will be a matter of time before problems arise. If Vickers knew what Ferdinand was thinking, he would have been wronged. The operation of Austro-Hungarian Bank has always been very good. If it hadn't been targeted by your bastard, there would have been blood mold. After the completion of this huge acquisition, Ferdinand, who was proud of the equinox, made another decision to establish the Royal Bank of Bulgaria. The newly acquired Austria-Hungary Bulgaria branch was merged into it, and the old and strong butler Karl became the first president. Well, Ferdinand's habit of opening a vest broke out again, and the bank that Franz had been commissioned to build became the vest industry again, and was named Bulgarian Construction Bank. Recommended book: Daming Iron Guard. Chanu traveled through and became a destitute military household in the last years of the Ming dynasty. Start the journey of counterattacking life! Chapter 85, Influence of Serbia. The mention of 1,000 miles collapsed in the ant's nest. The economic crisis from 1890 to 1893, under the butterfly effect of Ferdinand, together with the commercial conspiracy against the Austro-Hungarian Bank, finally detonated the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis. History has begun to change. The United States and Germany, the two countries that lost the most in this economic crisis, have now joined the unfortunate Austro-Hungarian Empire. The future direction of the world has become unclear. Well, now the economic crisis is brewing in the United States, and it has not yet exploded. The outbreak of the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis shook the whole of Europe. At present, the hegemony of the British Empire is still very stable. The contradictions between the powers have not intensified, and the two major military groups have not been formally established. For the sake of friendly relations and the common progress of human society, international capital has extended a helping hand to help the Austro-Hungarian Empire out of the economic crisis. Of course, the noble capitalists have paid so much for the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they have gained a little benefit, and it is not worth mentioning. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was still very rich. At that time, it was listed as one of the 5 traditional European powers along with Britain, France, Germany and Russia, and it was also one of the 5 major powers in the world. Its vast territory ranked 3rd in Europe at that time. After the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, its population was slightly lower than that of Russia and the German Empire, ranking 3rd in Europe. In the field of heavy industry, the prosperity of the machinery and instrument manufacturing industry and the strength of the steel and arms industry ranked 4th in the world, after Germany, the United Kingdom and the United States. Before the First World War, the heavy artillery weapons produced by the Skoda arsenal ranked 1st in the world. In the field of agriculture, the variety and output of agricultural products have surpassed Russia and ranked 1st in Europe. With such a large family, the financial system of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is still struggling, waiting for international friends like Ferdinand to come to rescue. Affected by the financial crisis, the Balkans were the first to suffer. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was too busy to take care of itself, and naturally the younger brothers couldn't take care of it. Since the Austro-Hungarian Bank announced that it would stop lending, other financial institutions have followed suit, still waiting to feed the small Balkan country that is waiting for the payment to get through. The economic crisis is miserable. The economic crisis is not over yet. The financial crisis is coming again. The first to bear the brunt is Serbia. As the younger brother of the Austria-Hungary Empire, after the outbreak of the economic crisis, It was in trouble. Was waiting for the Austro-Hungarian loan to get out of the woods, and now suddenly it's gone. Alexander, who was only 16 years old, was angry. He didn't wait for such bullying. The contract was signed, half of the loan was paid, and he suddenly said that it was gone. Then the flowers and plants in the palace were ruined, and they were ravaged by Alexander, and an emergency meeting was called after venting enough. Austro-Hungary suddenly stopped our loans. You say, what should we do now? Alexander Blianovic said angrily, we are going to make the most severe protest to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is completely ignoring our Serbia. Said the foreign minister with an angry face. The Austro-Hungarian Empire has suddenly suffered an economic crisis, and now it is overwhelmed by itself. Protesting will not be useful. We have been abandoned, and now I am afraid we have to make a living on our own. The Minister of Finance said with a complicated look. How much money does the government have now? Alexander asked sharply. A total of 213,218 dinars. These are not enough for the government to spend a month. The Minister of Finance thought for a while and said, then you Ministry of Finance, what is the solution now? Alexander asked expectantly. In the short term, spending can only be reduced. All government officials will stop paying half of their salaries from now on. The military expansion will be suspended, and military spending will be cut by 2/3. With the subsequent taxes, this should last for 3 months. During this period of time, we will seek external loans again. The Minister of Finance said confidently. No, I am against it. Shouted the Minister of War. Oh, what advice does our War Secretary have? Said the Chancellor of the Exchequer with a contemptuous glance. Humphrey, now the financial crisis is serious, and the army's expansion is temporarily suspended. This is acceptable. But why do you cut military spending by 2/3? Aren't you afraid of the army's mutiny? The War Minister asked angrily. After hearing the mutiny, the Finance Minister's face changed slightly, and then he quickly returned to his normal sneer and said, mutiny? Are you threatening me? Now the financial crisis, everyone should help each other and overcome the difficulties together. Can't the army not sacrifice for the country? And according to the current number of troops, our Ministry of Finance has accurately calculated that even if the military expenditure is cut by 2/3, it is still barely enough to pay the soldiers. Why do they want to mutiny? Could it be someone? Having said that, the voice of the Minister of Finance came to an abrupt end, and he stared at the Minister of War with a strange look, as if to find out something. Don't spit. Don't the army need training? Does the equipment need to be updated? You idiot. Idiot. There are priorities. Don't you know how to find an excuse to do some low-cost training for soldiers? Wouldn't it be enough to delay the equipment update for a few days? Said the Chancellor contemptuously. The Minister of War was so angry that he was speechless. As soon as the Minister of Finance showed a triumphant smile, Alexander said, enough, stop arguing. Now the situation in Serbia is very critical. You must focus on the overall situation, and don't keep arguing about everything. Humphrey, the Minister of War snorted in dissatisfaction. Although he didn't say it clearly, he also knew that Alexander, who had always advocated military expansion, was now obviously more inclined to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which made him very dissatisfied. The Minister of War wants to ask everyone now, what do you think the army is? You can cut military spending if you want. Is this taking national defense as a child's play? In the end he gave up. He knew it was useless to say anything now. The government has no money, and even if he grinds his lips, he can't change the result. Misfortunes do not come singly, and blessings are unparalleled. Just as the meeting was about to end, an emergency phone call came with bad news. Peasants in the Kralev region have rioted. The consequences of blindly raising taxes are here. After the outbreak of the economic crisis, the prices of agricultural products in Serbia plummeted due to the dumping of international capital. Farmers' income has decreased, but taxes have increased. Overwhelmed, the angry peasants in the Kralev region decided to resist the tax. What followed was a violent clash with tax collectors in the Kralev region, followed by peasant riots for unknown reasons. Upon receiving this thunderbolt, Alexander said with emotion, "Ah, God, have you abandoned Serbia? As for the riot, there is no doubt that it was suppressed. The cabinet soon reached an agreement and immediately sent troops to suppress it. For a time, Serbia was surging, and there was a lot of smoke everywhere. Chapter 86. The Balkans of Influence. In contrast, another bad brother, Greece. The situation is much better now. Although the Austro-Hungarian bank suddenly stopped lending and was affected, it doesn't matter, we have many creditors, and we can deal with it if we think of a way. For the Greek government led by George I, Ferdinand also had to stay convinced. In a country with a population of 2 million, it has an army of 150,000 people, including a navy of 40,000 gold-devouring beasts, which is simply admirable. The military has gone to such a degree that it stands to reason that the country should have been in chaos for a long time, but Greece did not. Although it was also affected by the economic crisis and had some minor disturbances, the country was generally stable. This is completely proud of the unique skills of Greece. One word: borrow. The political level of George I was leveraged. As soon as the economic crisis broke out, a cabinet meeting was immediately convened to find ways to deal with the crisis that may break out next. The economic crisis has broken out. What strategy does your cabinet have? George I asked expectantly. Respect to His Majesty the King, this economic crisis in Greece is caused by external reasons. We may not be able to get rid of the crisis by ourselves. Now only the government will buy food and provide relief to the unemployed. When the world economic crisis is over, everything will return to normal. Prime Minister Terry Koupis says with confidence. George I nodded, and he wisely did not object to the government's negative measures. If you want to talk about the Balkan countries, who is the most infiltrated by the foreign powers, there is no doubt that Greece is the first. From the start of independence from the colonial rule of the Ottoman Empire, it was all arranged by the great powers, including the first King Otto I in 1832, and now George I. They are all selected by foreign powers. National sovereignty has long since been lost. Relying on government policies to restrict international capital is tantamount to fooling around. George I did not have the courage to challenge the great powers, nor did Greece have the strength to challenge the great powers. After thinking about it, King George I said, "This is not enough. We still lack emergency funds. You must strengthen your ties with banks in various countries, and strive to allow them to issue some loans in advance in case of emergency!" Due to the preparations made by the Greek government in advance, when the Austro-Hungarian banks stopped issuing loans, the government still had some funds in hand and could negotiate with other banks slowly. In the end, the rich and powerful British boss won and took over the claims of the Austro-Hungarian bank very readily. Oh, it's just an extra 2 cents of interest. What a trifle. Look at Romania next door. In contrast, Kerala is still very nourished. Black Sea pearl is not blown out, the vast black land, rich mineral resources, even the bears covet. Well, there are so many places for bears to salivate, just leave it alone. Anyway, this rich family has provided a strong support for Romania's industrial development. Since the accession of King Carol I, the development of industry has been encouraged. Although no major results have been achieved, however, small and medium-sized factories have sprung up like mushrooms after a rain, and they look vibrant. Like other Balkan countries, Romania was also heavily infiltrated by foreign powers. Romania's fragile economy was hit hard by a wave of shearing following the economic crisis. After the outbreak of the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis, funds were withdrawn from overseas, and Romania was no exception. However, before the outbreak of the economic crisis, German agriculture was in arrears, and Kerala made a fortune by virtue of the covenant concluded with Germany and Austria in 1883. Then Romania passed without a hitch, only the financial crisis intensified. In order to raise military funds, Kerala taxed farmers again. Looking at the news from neighboring countries gathered together, Ferdinand breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, everyone was unlucky together. Sometimes people are like this. When they are unlucky, they will gloat when they see others are even more unlucky. Ferdinand is no exception. Judging from the collected data, the Balkan countries, without exception, have been affected by the economic crisis and suffered heavy losses. Bulgaria has made preparations in advance. Domestic capital is state-owned capital occupying a dominant position, and the government has strongly suppressed domestic capitalists to take advantage of the situation, launched the second five-year plan to absorb the unemployed in the society, and took the lead in getting rid of the economic crisis. The Greek government survived the crisis with loans, and the government provided relief to the unemployed, stabilizing the situation. Romania has fertile land and abundant products. Although the industry suffered heavy losses, it survived the crisis by exploiting farmers. The country is still undercurrent, although there may be a volcanic eruption. Needless to say, Serbia's economic losses are under the effect of Ferdinand's butterfly, and now a small-scale civil war has broken out. Well, Ferdinand admits that this uprising had his hands behind it. As for Montenegro's future kingdom of Montenegro, ignore it. A small country with a population of less than 500,000 and almost zero industry is not worthy of Ferdinand's attention. Not surprisingly, there is no analysis of the Ottoman Empire. It's not that Ferdinand didn't pay attention, the key is that now Ottoman is a mess, and the domestic bureaucrats are busy fighting for power and profit all day long. They haven't figured out the specific situation in the country yet. Anyway, it's very bad. This is also the case for Osman Ferdinand. Anyway, with the memory of later generations, he also knows that the ethnic contradictions of the Ottoman Empire are an unsolvable problem. There is only one spark to detonate, otherwise Ferdinand would not set his sights on this giant. In order to deal with the changes that the Balkans may face next, Ferdinand convened a cabinet meeting again. Everyone, since the outbreak of the economic crisis, we have passed the most difficult time. But the next problem comes again. After the outbreak of the Austro-Hungarian financial crisis, the control of the Balkans has been relaxed, and other powers will definitely find opportunities to take advantage of them. In the future, the Balkans are very likely to undergo major diplomatic changes. What should we do next in Bulgaria? How can we remain invincible in this change, and even gain greater benefits? Ferdinand said cautiously, this is a big proposition. Don't think you can sit back and relax when Bulgaria and Russia are allied. If there is a greater interest, Ferdinand does not mind breaking the treaty at any time. And of course the same is true for the bear. The conference room became silent. Although all the Bulgarian elites were sitting, everyone was at a loss on this issue. In terms of long-term strategic layout, except for Ferdinand, Bulgaria really does not have such a long-term strategist. Seeing that the scene was embarrassed, Chekhov said bravely, Your Excellency the Grand Duke, the situation in the Balkans is now in a mess. The five powers of Britain, France, Germany, Russia and Austria are intertwined. It is really difficult to see the direction of the future. Ferdinand nodded calmly. He knew that it wasn't because his subordinates did nothing. He was really a fan of their authorities and didn't know what to do. The newly appointed Prime Minister, Constantine, knew that it was time for him to express his opinion, and everyone else could not express his opinion, but as a Prime Minister, he must have it. Said anxiously. Chapter 87, The General Election Warm-Up. Time flies, and it's October. Affected by the economic crisis, the long-overdue Bulgarian general election is about to begin. In fact, since entering 1892, the atmosphere of the Bulgarian general election has become hot, and the various political parties that have been silent for a few years have begun to sharpen their skills and prepare for a big fight. Although the atmosphere in Bulgaria has become increasingly discordant with political parties, their enthusiasm for political participation has not been dampened. But the sudden economic crisis interrupted all of this, and everyone was overwhelmed. Who cares about elections? So I was embarrassed. I finally applied for the venue and set up the stage, but there was no audience. You must know that the Bulgarian government is now much stricter than before in regulating public opinion, and the newspapers are responsible for news content. The political cash that prevails in other countries, as well as the usual propaganda of throwing money, doesn't work in Bulgaria now. In order to suppress the collusion between political parties and capitalists, Ferdinand clearly enacted a law that political cash is equivalent to taking bribes. Moreover, the punishment is quite severe. Once found, all illegal gains will be confiscated, The parties concerned will be deprived of political rights for life, and they will be tried by the court according to the amount of money. Now the Bulgarian capitalists are still small arms and legs without the courage to challenge the government. Many people tried to push Ferdinand's waistcoat to the front, and the result was a patriotic education. Now all political parties in Bulgaria can use one word to sum up: poor. They are not ordinary poor, they have no other income except party fee income. Therefore, political parties are now played by rich people, and ordinary civilians can't even pay the most basic party fees. There is a fault in the political parties in Bulgaria. The newspaper office is not having a good time now. There is no way that since Ferdinand came to power, the newspaper office should be responsible for the authenticity of the news concerning the national economy and people's livelihood. Under such circumstances, who would dare to participate in politics casually? Once they are involved, they have to play. Why not specialize in entertainment news? Although there are not as many entertainment stars in later generations, poets, writers and the like are also emerging one after another, and they can be hyped up. Now, except for a few newspapers that have been incorporated by the government, most of them have been transformed. Some have begun to serialize novels, some have begun to serialize comics, and some have founded magazines to promote chicken soup for the soul. On the contrary, it has promoted the development of Bulgarian culture. Ferdinand's attitude towards this type of media is very clear, that is, to vigorously support it. In addition to low taxes, the main theme can also be rewarded by the Ministry of Culture and encouraged to expand overseas. In order to fully deal with the economic crisis, Ferdinand decisively announced the postponement of the general election. Now that the economic crisis has come to an end, the public is once again turning its attention to the general election. After all, it's a parliamentary election, and it collided with the cabinet election. It's hard not to be lively, and this time, there are no restrictions on personal identity, and Ferdinand has revised the electoral law. As long as you have Bulgarian nationality and be at least 30 years old, have no criminal record, no major moral problems, have a high school education or above, be in good physical and mental health, love the motherland and have made contributions to Bulgaria, and have lived in the country for 2 consecutive years before running for election. 10 years. Originally, Ferdinand planned to be a 35-year-old, but considering the age of the temporary cabinet members, he resolutely gave in, and he couldn't slap himself in the face. The requirements for voters have also changed: long-term residents with Bulgarian nationality, no criminal record, no major moral problems, with a primary school education or above, love Bulgaria, and have made contributions to Bulgaria, between the age of 65. The spirit and spirit are normal. Ferdinand from later generations knew that young people are the easiest to be fooled, and they also commit crimes from time to time. It is easy to be impulsive. What if they are taken advantage of? To know that the world war is not far away, or middle-aged people are more reliable, they will weigh the pros and cons. And Ferdinand also emphasized contributions, advocated the equality of rights and obligations, increased patriotism, and raised moral requirements, all of which were limiting the growth of political parties. Likewise, in order to show the progressive side of democracy, Ferdinand opened up women's suffrage for the first time, even though it was difficult for women to vote in Bulgaria at the time. But in the 19th century, it was also a great feat to make it clear in law that men and women had equal political status. After being tossed around by Ferdinand, the number of voters in Bulgaria was directly reduced by 1/3, and even fewer people met the election criteria. At that time, it also caused some twists and turns, especially the issue of women's suffrage, but under the strong insistence of Ferdinand, it was passed without any risk. It gave women the right to vote, which caused a sensation in Europe and the United States for a while. Bulgaria, which has always been known for its conservativeness, has come to the forefront of the world in the feminist liberation movement. Ferdinand also became a friend of women, supported by feminism at the time, gained a large number of female fans, and was commended by the International Council of Women, although he did not go to accept the award. The economic crisis has just passed, And although everyone's enthusiasm for the general election has dropped a lot compared to the beginning of the year, Sofia is still very lively. After all, it is the capital, and the people's enthusiasm for politics far exceeds that of other regions. Bosk is the owner of a shoe store in Sofia. He employs 2 shoemakers and 3 apprentices. He is barely a capitalist. Of course, he never thought so, because he was also a shoemaker, and his skills were very good. Whenever a distinguished guest came to the door, he would personally take action. No, an old friend came over and chatted with each other for a few words, and then he couldn't help but get involved with Laura, which party do you think will win this election? Bosk knew that he was always concerned about politics, so he asked with a smile. Bosk, I hope none of them can win this time. Laura said in a low voice. Why? Haven't you always supported the Democratic Party? Bosk asked in surprise. That was in the past, but the economic crisis made me understand that they can't make it. You know what? After the economic crisis broke out, I asked them for help, and those guys who usually talk about it, actually said that this is the law of the market. The government should not interfere, let the market free adjustment. God, those idiots, I'm about to go bankrupt, and they want me to continue to wait for the market to adjust. When I was angry, I turned my face with them. Laura said angrily. Oh, I'm going to buy you a drink and celebrate that you got rid of those idiots. Bosk said with a laugh. That's right. It should be celebrated. I should have understood it long ago. Apart from shouting a few slogans, they are deceiving food and drinking in the name of freedom. Laura said a little depressed. Oh, God bless you, got out of a big trouble. Bosk said with a laugh. Chapter 88, General Election 1. Yes, God bless me. By the way, have you heard? The situation abroad is not very good now. A friend of mine who is engaged in international trade has been planted this time. Laura: yeah, you know, I don't care much about foreign countries. Yesterday's newspapers said that the revolution in Serbia has been extinguished again, and they are too useless. It's over so soon. The situation should start to improve now. I haven't heard of any trouble in any country again. Bosk said with a smile. Oh, my friend, do you only see war in your eyes? Isn't it a problem for something as big as an economic crisis? Laura said a little excitedly. Isn't the economic crisis over? Didn't their government take measures? Like us, although the government intervened and everyone suffered some losses, didn't they survive? Bosk said depressedly. Laura patted her forehead with her hand, and said dejectedly, oh, my God, how did I know you? A stick. Do you think the government of every country is the same, or do the capitalists of every country have the moral cultivation of our Bulgarians? You must know that before the government introduced the bill to prohibit layoffs by companies in the economic crisis, the big capitalists in our country all said that they would not lay off staff during the economic crisis, would not raise prices, and stabilize people's hearts. Otherwise, the government's decree would not so easy to execute. Bosk thought for a while and said, yeah, even I was against this law at the time, and there were not many people making shoes at that time, which would cause me a lot of losses. Compared with the big figures like Lowo, my ideological awareness is not enough. Laura said with a smile, come on, don't be emotional. We are still ordinary people. We are still far from the realm of realizing social value like them, but they live like this, which is the real life. In any case, the Bulgarian parliamentary elections kicked off on October 28, 1892, and the vigorous elections were in full swing in Bulgaria. 5 years later, Ferdinand was no longer the king who had just arrived and had 2 or 3 kittens and puppies in his hands. After preparing for the congressional elections for so long, how could it be possible to make wedding dresses for others? The so many factories that have sprung up in Bulgaria are his strongest backing. Although only 50,000 of the hundreds of thousands of workers are eligible to vote, this number already accounts for half of all voters in Bulgaria. It can be said that the new Congress is already in Ferdinand's pocket. The parties that are busy bouncing around now have lost before they even started. In a small Bulgaria, at that time there were 13 political parties, large and small, and even more if small social groups were counted. 13 political parties seem to be very powerful, but in fact all their party members together are less than 5,000. Whether it is the Liberal Party or the Conservative Party in its heyday, the number far exceeds this number, and we can see the attitude of the Bulgarian people towards political parties now. As for the once powerful Conservative Party and Liberal Party, they have long since disappeared. After all, under the secret push of Ferdinand, everyone is shouting and fighting in Bulgaria. Politics are all smart people. Everyone knows that if you are in the name of the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, it would be nice not to be beaten by a sap, and you still want to win the election? Therefore, everyone changed their vests very immodestly. But when there was no leader in the group, the split became inevitable. However, since Ferdinand came to power, Bulgaria's national economy and people's livelihood have made great progress, and the public has little interest in political parties in comparison. Without his supporters, the days to come will naturally not be easy. Plus Ferdinand beat the underdogs. The restriction bills were quietly thrown over. Political parties and groups in Bulgaria are now struggling, and many people have withdrawn one after another. Even those who remain, many are preparing to make a final bet in this election. Charles is one of them. He was originally a rising star in the Conservative Party. When he was steadily rising, he encountered the Stam dictatorship. The big bosses of the Conservative Party have been imprisoned one after another. Seeing that the situation is not good, the clever Charles runs away decisively. After Stam fell, he came out and found that the Conservative Party had been abolished, and Charles, the leaderless leader, attracted a vote of people who wanted to take the opportunity to come to power. Unfortunately, the fact that Charles ran away at the time of crisis became his biggest stain and could not convince everyone. In addition, the Conservative Party was already notorious. Charles simply took his own supporters and established his own business and founded the Bulgarian Progressive Party. The development of the Bulgarian Progressive Party is not as smooth as Charles imagined, and it can even be said that it is struggling. On the one hand, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party have played too much, and now the Bulgarian people are tired of the endless battles between political parties. The introduction of the bill clearly stipulates that political parties are non-profit organizations, prohibits the collection of political cash, and cuts off the main income of political parties. Under this series of blows, Charles still persevered, but the people under his hand couldn't hold on anymore. Most of the people who joined the Progressive Party are speculators, or they are young people who have been fooled into by hot-blooded people. They joined the Progressive Party to develop politically, or to influence government policies through the Progressive Party, not to live a hard life. Only a few of them are human beings fighting for their ideals. Since Ferdinand came to power, Bulgaria has made great progress in all aspects. The people's living standards have been significantly improved, everything is developing in a positive direction, and the people's expectations for political parties are not high. The general environment will naturally affect individuals. In addition, Ferdinand has always paid attention to propaganda work. In contrast, people of insight felt that the political party could not achieve success, so they left one after another, and speculators saw no return on long-term investment, and they had no interest. From more than 3,000 party members in the peak period, there are only more than 200 people left. Even this last family may collapse at any time. Charles' ambition has almost been dispelled, and this election has been take it as your last chance. Win the general election and become the ruling party. It is estimated that no political party in Bulgaria has this ambition anymore. Charles' goal is simple: as long as he wins a few MPs in this election, it is enough to maintain a certain amount of influence over the government. Ding dong, ding dong. Come in. Charles, a young man of about 26 or 7 years old, walked in and said, "Mr. Charles, what are your instructions to me?" "Pooh, how's the election preparation going?" Charles said, looking at his right-hand man. "It's a pity that Mr. Charles is going to disappoint you. We don't have enough money in our hands, so it's difficult to carry out large-scale publicity. The prospects are not optimistic." Pooh said embarrassedly. "I know all this. It's not just us, right? Our opponents are probably not much better." Charles said with a wry smile. "Yes, according to the current Bulgarian law, even the propaganda must be authentic, and the public is not interested in the pie we draw. On the contrary, Many individual candidates have a good support rate, and most of them have a glorious resume, which proves that he has made contributions to Bulgaria, which is in line with the mentality of the current voters. Pooh said depressedly, "Oh God, this is really bad news, and now we can only hope for God's blessing. Otherwise Bulgaria will soon be a world sensation again, and we will be the laughingstock of the whole world, and the total number of votes for parties is lower than that of individual voters." Charles said with a wry smile, "If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 89, General Election 2. After all, smart people like Charles who can see through the essence are still in the minority. Many people still dream of being able to counterattack by means of the general election and lead Bulgaria back to the bright road of freedom. The Bulgarian New Liberal Party is one of the leaders. This new political party, born out of the Liberal Party, basically inherited the vast majority of the Liberal Party. Or they were scolded so badly by the people that they were forced to change their vests. Although most Bulgarians couldn't tell the difference between the two, they still scolded them the same way. The current leader of the party, Karsten Ivanov, who was originally Stambulov's rival in the party, has been suppressed until now. It was not until after Stam's fall that he was pushed out by the liberals who were misty in the wind and rain as a life-saving straw. Although Kasteltin lost to Stam in the previous power struggle, his influence in the Liberal Party is almost the same. So after he took power, he quickly stabilized the Liberal Party, and with the exception of some of Stam's diehards who left, the rest basically stayed. After Stam's fall, the Liberal Party, despite its infamous reputation, is still the largest party in Bulgaria compared to several other governments that have been devastated. Kasteltin was very supportive of Ferdinand's collapse of the cabinet, but he was completely dissatisfied with the establishment of a temporary cabinet by himself without the Liberal Party. However, at that time, the liberals were already unable to protect themselves. There were major factions opposing each other and a large number of hostile political parties outside. Kasteltin also didn't have the energy to cause trouble for Ferdinand. After he had dealt with internal conflicts, he would have to fight with other political forces. All kinds of troubles have not been settled yet. The struggle between the Bulgarian parties exacerbated the weakening of the party's power. Originally, during the Stam period, the Liberal Party and other parties had forged a bloody feud, and there was no room for relaxation between the two parties. Anyone with discerning eyes understands that if the major political parties continue to fight like this, everyone will be doomed sooner or later. Kasteltin has secretly discussed with other political party leaders on many occasions in an attempt to ease the conflict. But the liberals are willing to negotiate peace, but other parties are not. Even if the head of the political party can ease the relationship for the sake of the overall situation, the people below will not agree. Especially when relatives and friends died during Stam's period, the bloody feud cannot be resolved in a few words. Since Stam's cabinet is now in exile, it is not wrong to put this account on the Liberal Party. After several years of fighting with each other, everyone's vitality has been greatly damaged, and Ferdinand has introduced a series of bills restricting the development of political parties, making it even more difficult. Now the major political parties in Bulgaria can be said to be out of 10. Even the current largest party, the Bulgarian New Liberal Party, has less than 3,000 members. Compared with other parties, the New Liberal Party maintains a sufficient advantage both in terms of numbers and influence. The so-called fans of the authorities, according to Bulgaria's practice, won the parliamentary election and won the largest party in the predominant seat will be appointed to form a cabinet. However, this time is obviously an exception. The parties that have won the previous general elections have never won less than 50% of the seats in the Congress. Of course, the formation of a cabinet is a matter of course. At the internal meeting of the New Liberal Party, Kasteltin is now giving a high-spirited speech. "Gentlemen, the opportunity we have been waiting for has come. We have won this election and we will return to the center of Bulgaria again." The meeting ended with cheers from the neoliberals. as if they had won and even the outlines of future development were ready. Regardless of what everyone thinks, the Bulgarian parliamentary elections are still underway. For the successful completion of this election, Ferdinand invited major Bulgarian media to participate in the supervision, and set up a total of 68 electoral points in various electoral districts across the country. The election started smoothly, this time with anonymous voting. Eligible voters write down their candidates on a prepared slip of paper and put them in the designated box. After the voting was completed, it was opened on the spot in front of the public, and the local seniors were invited to be responsible for the voting and registration, so as to ensure fairness as much as possible. Is Ferdinand's integrity so high? Of course it doesn't exist, and he's not a fighter for freedom and democracy. In order to weaken the party members who may cause him trouble in the future as much as possible, the government also released the resumes of candidates before the election. All of them are based on real evidence, and they use real conspiracy. They are all treated equally and no one can say anything. In addition to the introduction of basic personal information, it also includes the activities of social groups that have participated in, what contributions to the country, etc. It seems clear at a glance. On the surface, it is fair, but it makes people cry. They are both from the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. Although they have changed their vests now, the impression of the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party is too deep. They gritted their teeth in hatred and voted for their opponents without hesitation. Not only party members have been hit, but many Democrats have also not benefited, mainly in the column of contribution to the country. Basically it is helping people canvass votes. If there is no subjective tendency, people will naturally vote for those who have contributed to society. These are all tangible contributions that can be widely recognized by the society, like the usual comment on the world, the past and the present. These controversial and uncertain, can only be recorded in the resume, and suddenly it seems that their role in this country is discovered. Not as good as an ordinary worker. Ferdinand's sudden attack caught many people by surprise, but it made it impossible for people to directly oppose it. It was completely open and transparent. Kastan is in a very bad mood now. In his opinion, Ferdinand is a typical example of crossing a river and demolishing a bridge, although it has happened once before. Under the circumstances at the time, after all, Ferdinand did not kill all the people, but only expelled Stam's cabinet. He understood his position aside. Including the previous psychiatric determination of Stam's cabinet members, Kastan fully supported it. Of course, these must be true, otherwise how could the Liberal Party retreat completely? The election results don't need to be read. Kastan knows that he is out. Is the cemetery where the 10,000 people killed outside the city of Sofia still there? No matter how hard he worked and how respected he was before, the Sofia people who had experienced the White Terror could never support a core figure of the former Liberal Party. In the 19th century, when information transmission was backward, Kastan, who had failed in the struggle for power within the party early on, had no chance to enter the political arena, and few ordinary people knew about him. If it is customary, who will expose the old bottom? Chapter 90. The election ended, no matter what Kastan thought. On October 28, 1892, the Bulgarian general election came to a successful conclusion. Of course, the impact is also very far-reaching, marking the end of the international party politics in Bulgaria. Ferdinand knew that this was only a short period of time, and that in the long run, political parties would still be on the stage of history. In fact, this is also a helpless move. At present, if Ferdinand secretly forms a political party, it can be said to be an easy move, but what are the consequences? Constantine's coming to power has been determined, and Bulgaria has not yet been able to compete with him. If there is another political party's support, this will definitely affect Ferdinand's authority. Ferdinand didn't plan to cultivate a competitor. He didn't dare to underestimate such a historical figure. There is no bottom line in politics. If he was accidentally overturned, it would be too late to cry. Ferdinand didn't want to test people's hearts. The best way is to not give them a chance. Political parties and royal power are inherently contradictory. A constitutional monarchy is not bad. If a direct republic is not good, Ferdinand would be too late to cry. Let's just do it once and for all. At least under the influence of Ferdinand, This generation of Bulgarian people is not interested in political parties. Without the support of the people, do they still want to become bigger? By the time the people had forgotten all of this, Ferdinand would have already done so. Just like Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom, her prestige has become deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Even with a constitutional monarchy, she has begun to distance herself from politics and can still dominate the direction of the United Kingdom. People are in good spirits when it comes to happy events, and the overall situation has been decided. This congressional election was conducted completely according to Ferdinand's will. In addition, he had already secretly controlled half of the votes, and he really could not think of the possibility of losing. Now Ferdinand has returned to normal, leisurely admiring the beautiful long legs in the palace. At this time, Alice walked in, handed over a document, and said with a blushing face, "Grand Duke, this is the result of this election. The list of members of Congress is here." Ferdinand reluctantly withdrew his thoughts. Business was important, and the lessons of history told him that if he acted recklessly, Nicholas II was an example. Looking at a thin list of pages, there is also a thick stack of information attached to the back. Ferdinand just swept away. There was no accident in this election, and he won more than 6 seats. There are very few members of the political party, and there is no doubt that all the female members who signed up for the election were tragically eliminated. However, a small episode still aroused his interest. Under normal circumstances, there will be a winner no matter what, even if the number of votes is the same. There can be another round, but an accident happened here. Ferdinand asked in puzzlement. "Oh, what's going on? How could no one win in the Gabler constituency? Are the candidates collectively convulsing?" Alice said playfully, "Grand Duke, the reasons for these problems are listed below. The candidates for this constituency are all former liberals, and the local people are very dissatisfied with them when they find out. A total of more than 3,000 people voted, and the one with the highest votes, Kaki Ivanlov, doesn't have more than 30 votes, and all the candidates add up to not get 3% of the votes. The content of the others is very interesting, you can look at it." Ferdinand turned a few pages back and stopped at page 16. The content inside caught his attention, and the voters filled it out very interestingly. As expected of all people who believe in God, the one with the highest vote rate is God, accounting for 48%, followed by requesting the removal of several candidates for election, accounting for 3%. 16. There are also various reasons, normal reasons such as hiding identity information before, moral problems, strange reasons such as, too ugly to represent me, suspecting that they are foreign spies and suggesting censorship. They are the incarnation of the devil. Seeing Ferdinand laughing and laughing, I can imagine the expressions of several candidates at the time after hearing these reasons at the scene. It must be wonderful. It is inevitable that no one will be elected, even the unlucky guy with the highest number of votes. Kaki Ivanlov is really embarrassed to declare himself the winner. Otherwise, he will be the shortest elected member of parliament in Bulgarian history. It is estimated that the voters at the scene would not mind exercising the right to remove the member again. Even so, they will become the laughing stock of history, leap into world-class celebrities, and educate future generations as negative examples. Politics is not something everyone can play. The rest of the people filled in a variety of content, including their own names, heroes in Bulgarian history, Ferdinand the King, and international figures. They expressed their dissatisfaction with the candidates in various ways. The host was still very clever. As soon as the statistical results came out, they announced that no one was elected. The person with the highest vote rate was not elected according to the regulations, which comforted the people. He also asked the candidates for their opinions on the spot, without considering their feelings at all. It goes without saying how embarrassing the scene was. Anyway, the voters were satisfied and they didn't like it. I was willing to let the seat of the congressman be vacant first, fully exercising his right to be the master of the house. After this incident spread, it also left a very far-reaching impact. Since then, candidates have been boycotted in elections around the world from time to time, including the later European presidential elections. where all the candidates were rejected by the people. There is no doubt that the Bulgarian political parties have been hit hard again in this general election. The people's boycott was beyond their imagination. 13 political parties won only 5 seats in Congress, with less than 5% of the vote. It can be said that for a long time in the future, they can only continue to settle down, and their political influence will be at the lowest point. A new wave of quitting the party has begun again. Under the bombardment of relatives and friends, one by one passionate young people left sadly. The results of this election, in addition to hurting political party members, also received a cold reception internationally. The British, Germans, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire were all injured. In order to interrupt Bulgaria's pro-Russian trend, they attempted to influence Bulgaria's future national policy through this election. For this election, they also mobilized their respective influences to help canvass votes. Even so, the results were still so miserable. The most contested female suffrage in this election was unanimously opposed by conservatives. Well, the new faction also has no support, so it can be said that this time Ferdinand is a lone fighter. Ferdinand should be thankful that there were no female congressmen born in this election, and everyone just used it as a chatter after dinner. Otherwise, the old masters may have come to the gate of the Sofia Palace to petition. Chapter 91. Influence. As soon as the parliamentary elections were over, public opinion in Bulgaria was in a frenzy. Whether it's women winning the right to vote, or a few unlucky people in the gables, or even the defeat of major political parties in the general election, there is too much content to describe. In the evening, Paul worked overtime again. Now he has a headache again. As the editor-in-chief of the Bulgarian daily, he used to have a headache because there is no news, but this time he has a headache because of too much news. There is so much news to make front-page headlines. Anyone can make a splash in Bulgaria, and it's a headache to choose. The articles are carefully selected, and have been edited by many people. They are almost impeccable. They are all essence, and nothing can be eliminated. News is time-sensitive. If you miss the best time, it will no longer be news. There is no need to think about exclusive reports. The congressional elections are being watched by all the people, and all the colleagues are there, and everyone has received similar news. It is not easy to stand out from the peers. He has been engaged in editing work for a long time, and overtime has become the norm. The high-pressure work state has made Paul addicted to smoking. Smoking has become a way for him to release pressure. Paul stood up, opened the cigarette case and saw that there was one last cigarette in it. He sat down again, lit it, and took a deep breath. The smoke filled his face, and there were traces of melancholy on his face. Final choice. It's not easy to do current affairs news. He must pay attention to authenticity. As the editor-in-chief, he has always been under a lot of pressure, and of course his treatment is also very attractive. As the editor-in-chief of the Bulgarian daily, he has a high status in society and a very generous salary, which is enough to allow his family to live a prosperous life, which is also the driving force for Paul to persevere. The assistant Kakis felt a little anxious when the editor-in-chief couldn't make up his mind. The printing house had already urged him for the third time, if it is still too late to determine the typesetting, then it will affect the printing, and tomorrow morning may face unreported fields to sell. Kakis hesitated again and again, but went forward and said softly in front of Paul, the editor-in-chief should make a decision. The printing house has already sent someone to urge him 3 times. Well, I see. What do you think about Kakis? Paul said after taking a deep breath. The Kakis were dumbfounded. How could he decide such a major event? If it's ordinary news, it's fine. The reporting of big news like this is related to the status of Bulgarian daily in the industry. The Kaki pants stumbled and said a suggestion. Let's put it together. You mean the plus version? It's not impossible, although the risks are greatly increased. If it is successful, the benefits will be very good. If there is no better way, let's do it. Paul said to himself. Kakis exclaimed, this result is really unexpected. What he originally meant was, it is recommended to condense the content, delete some unnecessary comments, and make do with it. Kakis immediately said, yes, since the editor-in-chief has already decided, he has no intention of explaining it. Anyway, This kind of big thing is not something that a small person like him should consider. As for what kind of impact the extroversion will have, this is not what khakis know about. Anyway, he has never encountered such a situation. At the end of the 19th century, the purchasing power of the people was available. From purely economic considerations, Paul's decision was undoubtedly a risky one. The printing cost would increase if the printing was added, so the sales price would also have to rise, which might affect the final sales volume and cause losses. Risk increases. If the influence is taken into account, then the plus version is undoubtedly a conservative approach. It is considered to be comprehensive, does not reflect the core, and does not miss the key points, and will not affect the status of the industry. Sofia is not the only one who is troubled by this, but also his colleagues. No matter which aspect the focus is on, no one can give up such a major news. It can be imagined that tomorrow's newspaper sales will break records again. At midnight, the printing houses began to get busy. At this time, the major newspapers had already made their choices and were ready to show their talents in the competition for public opinion tomorrow. Charles looked at the newspaper at hand and said in disbelief, "God, how is this possible?" Although he was already prepared to lose the general election, but after seeing the result, Charles still had a hard time accepting it. According to previous estimates, it is nothing more than that in this election, no party can win the dominant seat, and the total number of seats is at least 30 to 40%. They can still win over some non-partisan people and join forces with other political parties to form a cabinet together. But what about now? All the political parties thumped together, and they threw so neatly. Even the Liberal Party, which has the most seats, has only 2 MPs. No matter how shameless they are, the neoliberals don't dare to call themselves the winners now. Does Caston now dared to propose to Ferdinand to form a cabinet in the name of the majority party? Not to mention whether it can be passed or not. If this is proposed, it will not be laughed at by the public. In the early morning, on the streets of Sofia, there was a clear cry of newsboys, selling newspapers, everyone, come and see, the latest news, the latest news. The results of yesterday's parliamentary election have been announced, and the outcome will definitely exceed your imagination. Come on everyone. Laura, who had just left the house, was attracted by the new news from the newsboy's mouth. He stepped forward and said, "Bulgarian Daily, Sofia Morning News, and Global Express each have a copy." The newsboy quickly and skillfully took out the newspaper named by Laura from his bag, handed it over respectfully, and said, "Okay, sir, please keep the newspaper you want, for a total of 1 lev." Laura took the newspaper and was immediately attracted to it. She paid no attention to the price, and continued to read it again. When he saw the section Women Gain the Right to Vote, he frowned. Although the government had already announced it before, it still made him very unhappy that it happened. After seeing the joke that no one was elected in the Gabler constituency, Laura couldn't help but complain about the unlucky ones who were eliminated. After seeing the final election results, Laura said 3 good words in a row. Like many Bulgarians, what everyone wants most now is to maintain the status quo. They are all frightened by the Stam government and worried about changing to a tossing cabinet. Now that independents have won the final election, it means that there will be no major changes in the government, and the interim cabinet will remain in office. The Bulgarian election in 1892 left a strong mark in history. It marked the decline of the Bulgarian political party, and it did not change that until 100 years later. In later generations, it was also considered by historians as a sign of the awakening of the Bulgarian people. Chapter 92, The Opening of the Congress. After the congressional elections, Ferdinand announced that he would reopen the National Assembly on November 8, 1892, with the aim of electing a new legitimate government. Although this was just a passing scene, Ferdinand still attached great importance to it and announced the news at the first time. At the end of the 19th century, human beings had begun to transition to a legal society, and the legal system received more and more attention. As a vested interest, Ferdinand certainly did not want to undermine the majesty of the law. Since Ferdinand's accession to the throne, although minor amendments have been made to Bulgarian laws, The constitution has never been directly violated. Anyway, the legal system in Bulgaria is not perfect, and there are many places where there are two ways of doing things. Even the jurists at the time expressed their opinions and there was no conclusion. Ferdinand's small movements naturally did not attract people's attention. Now that a new Congress is born, it is time to legalize many of the previous regulations. Without Congress, Bulgaria has not changed much. What should people do? This is the benefit of a conservative country. People are not very politically sensitive. Internationally, Ferdinand has been hacked, and he has been called terrifying tyrant and evil dictator by so-called Democrats without money. Well, in fact, there was no monarch in Europe that was not scolded by them at that time. Everyone was the same. It was just that Ferdinand was scolded a little more recently. But when his mouth is raised on others, Ferdinand can't control it anymore. Just let them go. Anyway, they won't do anything other than shout a few times. In order to ensure the stability of national thinking, after Ferdinand succeeded to the throne, Bulgarian students stopped going to France, and instead went to Britain, Germany, Austria, Russia and other countries, even Belgium and Sweden. Ferdinand has always kept aloof from the French liberal trend of thought. Yes, it has a positive side for promoting national liberation and national independence. But that thing is really a cancer of the empire. Since the rise of liberalism, the good French Empire has begun to fight political infighting at home, and its national strength has gradually declined. The world's top industrial power has gradually turned into a usury kingdom, and Ferdinand is drunk when he thinks about it. Putting away his chaotic thoughts, before the meeting started, Ferdinand still summoned the next cabinet that had been decided by default in the lounge. How is your preparation, Constantine? Don't lose the chain at the critical moment. Bulgaria has a precedent for dismissing candidates, right? Ferdinand joked. Constantine replied with an embarrassed smile. Don't worry, Your Excellency, we are all ready. The achievements of the interim cabinet in the past few years are all here. With these foundations, there should be no jokes. Ferdinand smiled and nodded, expressing his acquiescence. This term of Congress members, the number of mouth guns is already the lowest in history, and solid political achievements are the best weapon to conquer them. Even if Ferdinand did not operate in the dark, the result of this election can now be determined. Then he said, then you should go and see the members first, and I'll be there later. As soon as Ferdinand finished speaking, several people answered in unison, yes. Then they retreated to Ferdinand and left, daring to go to the Congress Hall. The Congress Hall is now very lively, and members of the parliament are gathering in groups of 3 or 5 to discuss in full swing. There are also a few who have been honorably isolated, and it can be said that they stand alone on the side. Bulgaria is a small country with a sparse population. Many parliamentarians know each other and have a good relationship. The conflicts between regions are minimal. However, the direct contradiction between political party members and non-party members has a long history. Before Ferdinand came to power, non-party members were almost deprived of their political voice. In relatively conservative Bulgaria, non-partisan MPs believe that political parties are tools for power and personal gain. Party MPs think they have no big picture view and are old-fashioned. Previously, political parties had an advantage in Bulgaria, and they could also recruit some non-partisan people. Now that the feng shui turns and non-partisan MPs are in a dominant position, they have no way to attract people, and it is still possible to squeeze out the evil spirits. Mr. Charles, who has just been elected, is now embarrassed. Due to the previous battles, the few members of the political party have no common language, and the non-partisan congressmen are not interested in him again, and he has no expectations for the previous plan. The matter has to start with the congressional elections. After the new Liberal Party lost in the general election, Kastan's hatred for Ferdinand rose to an inexhaustible level, and he found the original behind-the-scenes supporters of the new Liberal Party, Britain and Austria-Hungary. Obviously, the British and Austria-Hungary have been dissatisfied with Ferdinand's pro-Russian policy for a long time. Before, they were trying to make the bear turn, but they put up with it for the time being. Now that the opportunity has come, I am naturally happy to teach Ferdinand a lesson, and maybe it can also change the political landscape of Bulgaria. With this idea in mind, the two sides naturally hit it off. The British and Austria-Hungary came forward to facilitate the coalition of the Bulgarian political parties, and were ready to win over a group of parliamentarians who were dissatisfied with Ferdinand and attack the National Assembly. In order to keep the secret, no one except the people involved knew about it this time, so we couldn't do it in advance to win over the congressmen. But now the non-partisan MPs are not willing to contact them at all, and there is no way to win over them. The major political parties in Bulgaria are united, and the MPs and the Congress have only just been able to make up the number of proposals. As for the result is not optimistic. As soon as Constantine and others entered the venue, they became the focus, chatting with enthusiastic parliamentarians from all over the country until the opening of the Congress. There are no tricks, everything is done as usual. Oh, the Bulgarian speaker is vacant. Previously, it was nominated by the party that won the general election. Of course, this time there is no more, so let's leave it empty. Anyway, it doesn't affect the next meeting, so let the Secretary-General take over his job first. After the ceremony, Ferdinand came out and announced the start of the National Assembly. First, Constantine made a work report on behalf of the interim cabinet, summarizing the achievements of Bulgaria in the fields of economy, culture, politics and military in the past few years. Previously, although there were related reports in the newspapers, they had never been summarized in this way, and a series of political achievements had been added together. It was quickly recognized by all the members of parliament, and even the harshest people had to admit that the interim cabinet government did a good job. The subsequent state consultation went very smoothly. Chapter 93, Conspiracy. As we all know, Ferdinand asked Constantine to report on his work first, in order to pave the way for the subsequent election of the prime minister. Not beyond everyone's expectations, the first proposal was Ferdinand's nomination of Constantine as prime minister of the cabinet. There is no doubt that in the work of the previous provisional government, Constantine made great contributions to Bulgaria. In the face of real achievements, there is nothing to question, whether willing or not. No one objected to this nomination. In the next vote, there was no upset. Constantine was elected as the prime minister of the new Bulgarian government with 62 votes, 5 abstentions, and no dissenting votes. Immediately after Constantine was sworn in at the capital, Ferdinand approved it on the spot. Then there is the review of the temporary regulations formulated by the previous interim cabinet. Since they passed it in advance, everyone was prepared, and Ferdinand was bundled and sent to vote together. The stakeholder groups involved are enormous. Ordinary people can't control so much. Since Ferdinand came to power, most of the laws promulgated are in favor of the interests of ordinary people, and everyone's living standards have improved significantly. Now the working class and peasant class in Bulgaria are the most staunch supporters of Ferdinand's New Deal. In the eyes of ordinary people, whoever opposes these laws is not going to get along with them. Even if the lawmakers want to object, they should also consider the attitude of the voters outside, and think about the unfortunate people who were dismissed not long ago. It is better not to cause trouble in this regard. The congressmen who just took office are mostly confused about these legal provisions. The private goods mixed with Ferdinand are all attached to the big law. A lot of content that would cause controversy was passed without any twists and turns. The meeting went smoothly, and Charles, who had been excluded all the time, was now in a hurry. No way. This Congress is really too harmonious. In the past, the Bulgarian National Assembly did not have a fight, even if it went smoothly. Noisy is the normal opening of the parliament. Occasionally, there will be a fight between members, which is regarded as a flavoring agent. Now what? From the beginning of the meeting to the present, the motion proposed by the government has never been rejected, not even a major controversy. It's not that they don't work hard. It's really impossible to say anything. Every time they raised an objection, other members immediately jumped out to refute. Considering the advantages of the number of both sides, no matter how many people Charles could speak, they would all be speechless in the end. Fortunately, Charles is still awake, holding down a radical neoliberal next to him. What a joke. And now the Rush also needs to consider the value of force. Don't you see there are only so many of us? If there is a conflict, today's business will not be small. Anyway, the probability of passing through the current situation is infinitely zero, but there is no need to find a beating for nothing. Ferdinand, who was sitting in a high position, was watching the life below with great taste. If it wasn't for the occasion, he really planned to cut a pot of tea and slowly eat melon seeds to watch the fun. Seeing several possible conflicts, they were all pressed down, and Ferdinand secretly regretted that there was one less good show. Maybe you can get rid of a few unpleasant bastards. That's right, he's so black-hearted. In the law just passed, there are provisions stipulating the ethics of state public officials. Now if a member of parliament dares to fight, he can deal with it according to law. As for whether to suspend his right to represent or directly dismiss the MP, it depends on his mood. Charles knew that he couldn't wait any longer. No matter what the result was, he should do the business of the day first, otherwise it would be difficult to go back to work. Ferdinand, who saw the party members being excluded and still gloating on the side, did not know that a conspiracy against him was about to unfold. Charles ran into trouble again. According to the usual practice, the parliamentary proposals were submitted to the Speaker first, and then read out by the Speaker. Debate and vote again. Don't look at the number of motions passed at today's meeting, but they were all proposed by Ferdinand or Constantine on behalf of the government. So far, there have been no proposals by members of parliament. So who should it be handed over now? Charles has a headache, so he can't be handed over to the host of the meeting. He is not a member of parliament. The motion is sacred and not everyone is eligible to receive it. It stands to reason that it can be handed over to the king, but Charles and the others dare not. This is all aimed at Ferdinand. If they are handed over and held down, they will not be able to cry. It is normal for a bill to be delayed for a day or two, even if it is dragged on for several months. The probability of success is infinitely zero. If it is exposed in advance, even the disgusting Ferdinand will not be able to do it. After the noon congregation, Charles and the others had a close meeting and decided to attack, for nothing else, just to mix the water. The days of being excluded are really not lived by people. It is really too embarrassing. At the beginning of the afternoon meeting, Ferdinand hadn't come yet. When Charles saw the group, Chi breathed a sigh of relief. Disregarding the rules, Charles immediately announced in a high-profile manner, "Members and gentlemen, delay everyone for a few minutes. I have a proposal here that needs everyone to vote." As soon as Charles finished speaking, someone picked up, "Didn't you see that we are busy? Do you still understand the rules? How about your quality? Don't you know that it is impolite to interrupt people's work? Now we are discussing national affairs. I don't have time to accompany you to play the game of little children playing house." It also caused a burst of echoes from everyone. That is, there are no rules. What are they doing wrong? Listening to everyone's discussion, Charles looked as usual, and politicians have always had a thick skin. "These are all pediatrics," he continued. "The five of us jointly proposed a proposal to propose that everyone vote to amend the constitution and implement a constitutional monarchy." Everyone was shocked. "This is going to be a big earthquake." I relaxed and relaxed again. "I still need Lao Tzu's approval to change it. Why should I listen to you?" Someone immediately spoke up. "I object. Now Bulgaria is on the right track to tell us to move forward, and we can't let some villains with ulterior motives destroy it. If you talk about amending the constitution, you should amend the constitution. Do you think this is pediatrics?" A person next to him said, "But the constitutional monarchy is indeed the mainstream of future development. The British rely on the constitutional monarchy to become world hegemons." Someone else said, "You are stupid. Aren't Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia all monarchies now? Isn't it good? Isn't our Bulgarian development not bad? Why should we listen to them? Even if we want to reform, it is us proposal change." The man suddenly realized, "You mean they have a conspiracy? What kind of conspiracy could it be? No matter what, those political parties are not good goods anyway. Whatever they support, we can just oppose it." Another said, Chapter 94, farce and the attitude of the powers. The belated Ferdinand just saw this familiar scene. Whatever the enemy supports, we will oppose it, a very popular phrase in later generations, oppose for the sake of opposition. It is obvious that the people below work in the rhythm, and they still do a good job. You must know that although the Bulgarian people are not interested in political parties, these parliamentarians are much calmer. How can they be so disgusted? Of course, it is the credit of Ferdinand's younger brother. Most of the people below are his own people. As long as someone coaxes them together, others will immediately agree. The other congressmen saw that Charles and the others were hostile, and because of the influence of the Bulgarian people, most of them did not like the political party. In order not to be isolated, they tacitly chose to keep their distance from Charles and the others. Charles was not easy to find a gap, and when Ferdinand was not in trouble, he was very injured. You must know that the influence of the constitutional monarchy in Bulgaria is not small, and there is no lack of supporters among the parliamentarians. It stands to reason that this proposal will receive a group of supporters. The result was the same as in the original political party era. We oppose any proposal made by the enemy. It doesn't matter whether it is correct or not, and it doesn't matter if it is right. Ferdinand watched the farce quietly from the side, without any intention of interfering. Anyway, up to now, none of the congressmen have come out to express their support, and they are all busy criticizing Charles and a few people full of righteous indignation. The few people who were neutral just now are also being pulled into the battlefield. Hey, friend, what do you think about this? Athos, I'm still a little confused. Said hesitantly. What's so confusing? We are parliamentarians, and we want to represent the public opinion. Now the people of Bulgaria hate political parties, right? Of course we also hate them. Right. Giazhenk said sternly. Biz even more confused. What you said makes sense, but I am speechless. In the name of the representative, for the justice of the world, for the future of Bulgaria, and then resolutely join the critical opposition. Well, no more voting. The result is already obvious. Except for Charles, who proposed the proposal, others have criticized them more or less. What's more, they are educated in patriotism, and they feel ashamed to say it. Charles looked at each other, and then tacitly chose to remain silent. He never mentioned the matter of voting, and he was too lazy to humiliate himself. Such a little episode, and that's it. Ferdinand didn't mean to ask for trouble, and just let him go with the wind. He did not like some protagonists in order to pretend to force, let the opponent play to their heart's content, then use it to vote, and then turn around and slap the face. Ferdinand said that he is a qualified noble, and his face is very valuable, and he cannot use it to compete with a few small trash fish. No one came out to check their presence again, and the next meeting went very smoothly. Basically, they were all government proposals, which were approved by Congress and sent to Ferdinand for signature and approval. The 3-day meeting was originally planned, but on the first day, it was officially announced that the task had been completed ahead of schedule. Ferdinand very openly announced the holiday, except for one half of the members of Congress who will be resident in Sofia. Everyone can go back to their respective homes, waiting for the rotation, or the next major meeting. Charles and several people applied to leave in frustration. What a joke. Under the current situation, Congress has no place for them at all. Don't cowardly now. Is it just to stay here and get angry every day? As for partisan interests, how bad can the environment in Bulgaria be now? Even if someone proposes to ban political parties, Charles can guarantee that it will definitely be approved by a large number of votes, and most people in Bulgaria will probably set off firecrackers to celebrate. The current political atmosphere in Bulgaria is very strange, and the country is developing in harmony, except for a few political parties. There is no way that since the election, the media has spared no effort to make up for it. Many people couldn't stand the strange eyes of those around them. In the new wave of quitting the party, several small parties finally couldn't hold on anymore, and sadly announced their closure. With the new government in place, Bulgaria is once again busy as it used to be. The whole country is like a big construction site. Everyone is working hard on it, adding bricks and bricks to this country. The Austro-Hungarian diplomat in Bulgaria, Christoph Walz, wrote in a letter to the old Emperor Franz Joseph I: His Majesty the Emperor, greetings from your vassal Christopher Waltz. The situation in Bulgaria is very stable. Your nephew has done a good job, and has inherited your brilliance. He now dominates the course of the country, the crown is supreme, and his staunch supporters are at every level. Under his rule, political parties have become bereavement dogs, spurned by the people. Capitalists have become lions without claws, shivering by the side. The capitalists are forced to declare their support even when the government introduces a bill that seriously harms them. It may be a legacy of the stamp period. Now the emerging capitalists in Bulgaria are very timid, behave like saints, and are morally impeccable. It may be another species. They have nothing in common with capitalists. Maybe they haven't discovered it yet. According to them, the Bulgarian capitalists are highly moral and willing to contribute to the country. Anyway, I wouldn't believe it. I would rather believe that they were scared. After all, their predecessors were sent to see God. Oh, basically the political landscape we're after. It is basically realized here. Although Bulgaria is only a small country, its development speed is very amazing, and it has left their neighbors far behind. I can assert that if Bulgaria continues its current rate of development, within a decade another country to complete its industrialization will appear in the Balkans. If not for the constraints of population and resources, I would even worry that they would threaten the interests of the Austro-Hungarian Empire in the Balkans in the future. In short, the future trend of the situation in the Balkans cannot leave Bulgaria. It is a pity that they are now allies of Russia. Although they have worked hard with us, it is a pity that the Russian-Belgium alliance is still so unbreakable. Bulgaria needs Russian industrial raw materials, and Russia needs them as a moment of nails in the Balkans. And the same traditional culture. You know, Bulgaria is the birthplace of Slavic civilization. Christopher's letter also represented the attitude of the great powers towards Bulgaria at that time. Chapter 95, The Trip to St. Petersburg. The earth will turn as usual without anyone, and the sun will rise as usual without anyone. Quotations of the Demon King. With the birth of a new cabinet government, Bulgaria continues to gallop on the highway. The leaders of the political parties who failed in the general election, Charles and others, could not bear the pressure from all sides, and they chose to go abroad one after another. After receiving this news, Ferdinand smiled and said that a few bereaved dogs were not worthy of his attention. Just after dealing with domestic affairs, Ferdinand's troubles came to him. Blind date is a very cruel topic, especially for Tilda. It's really unbearable. Writing this as a single dog is simply asking for guilt. You can imagine the shadow area in the author's heart now. Before crossing the border, Ferdinand never went on a blind date. Houses, cars, bills are all serious problems. Better than ordinary people, Ferdinand was an orphan in his previous life, and his mother-in-law required both parents to die. Therefore, Ferdinand was a single dog before crossing the border. Since he had no parents, he had to work hard on his own. Naturally, the house and car did not exist. The tickets were barely self-sufficient. After repeated defeats and repeated blows, Ferdinand suffered from fear of blind date in his previous life. After crossing over, it will be much better. The original owner grew up with the golden key. The house and car are all right. Ferdinand himself can't figure out how many. Anyway, it is a lot, and of course no one mentioned it to him anymore. Love is also farther away from him, and now the first thing to consider is identity, followed by politics. Ferdinand has now given up. Sooner or later, he wants to get married, and he simply sells himself for a good price. Anyway, it is an open secret for European nobles to raise lovers, and raising 10 or 8 of them is considered compensation for themselves. It is enough that marriage can be done with respect and succession. Well, Ferdinand admits he was fooling himself. For a marriage without feelings, if the other party is a beautiful woman, that is not something that cannot be considered. On December 5, 1892, Ferdinand, at the urging of his mother, Princess Clementine, finally set foot on the road to St. Petersburg with a large party. I was invited to go to Russia for a state visit. Whether you believe it or not, I believe it anyway. This is simply a state visit and a blind date has nothing to do with it. As for why the invitation to the ball was received, It must have been a mistake by the Russian side. You know that the Russian bureaucracy has frequent problems, and a little blunder is normal. With trepidation, Ferdinand entered St. Petersburg. Russia is so fucking cold in winter. The vast white snow covered the city. With curiosity, Ferdinand just put his head out of the carriage, and the cold air was blowing on his face, and the cold wind was biting. But in an instant, Ferdinand felt that his cheek was no longer his own, and he quickly retracted his head. At this moment, Ferdinand had to admire the resilience of the Russians. St. Petersburg has only 2 seasons, winter and summer, 4 months of summer and 8 months of winter. Living in such a cruel climate for a long time, Tsarist Russia did not move the capital. You know, in the vast land of Russia, there are countless places with better climates than St. Petersburg, almost all kinds of climates. However, in order to strengthen the control of the country and maintain political influence in Europe, from the Tsarist nobles to the common people, they did not pay attention to moving the capital. The brutal environment has exercised the resilience of the Russians, and the fighting nation is not governed. For nearly 100 years, no matter how the world has changed, Russia has always stood firm. Entering St. Petersburg, Ferdinand and others held a grand welcome ceremony, and Crown Prince Nicholas and his wife were personally responsible for the reception. After looking at the reception specification, Ferdinand knew that this was done according to the rules of the nobles. Ferdinand came here this time not only to represent the Bulgarian royal family, but also to represent the face of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family. Obviously, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family deserves the attention of the Nikolai family, and they are the most prosperous families in Europe at the moment. If it is really based on the principle of reciprocity in diplomatic relations, then the person who came forward to receive it is an archduke. Between European aristocrats, the bones are broken and the tendons are connected, and the messy relationship between relatives is not clear. In order to maintain the dignity of the blood, there are only a few families that can marry each other, and they can't escape. The weather in St. Petersburg was terrible, with a low temperature of -20 to 30 degrees Celsius. Neither Ferdinand nor Princess Clementina were cold-resistant creatures. They hid in the room obediently, except for necessary visits. Don't go out. Ferdinand, when is the damn weather in St. Petersburg? Princess Clementina said with emotion. Ferdinand rolled his eyes. Over the past few days, he had heard how many times he had heard complaints from his mother. He said weakly, "It's about half a year left. You know that the winter in St. Petersburg lasts for 8 months. How long has it been?" "Never mind, we won't be leaving until summer anyway." "Oh, God, spare me. This damned weather." "Ferdinand, we shouldn't be here now. If I knew it was so cold, I would definitely choose summer to come here." "No, you should come here by yourself. You are already an adult humans, can be independent." Princess Clementine continued to complain. Ferdinand looked at the unhappy Princess Clementine and secretly complained, "I don't know who said that he likes snow before, and he wants to spend Christmas in the country of ice and snow," and he hastily urged him to go on the road. "Now it's snowing, it's all over the street, and it will freeze people into popsicles." Of course, Ferdinand will always be a good son, at least he will never be hard on his mother's lips. He said comfortingly, "Don't worry, my mother. I'm already thinking of a way to compress the travel time in St. Petersburg as much as possible, and try to leave this ghost place as soon as possible." "You talk about this kind of nonsense every day. Let's just believe you once and tell you, Ferdinand, if you dare to lie to me, you have to consider the consequences yourself." Princess Clementina threatened fiercely. Ferdinand can only smile awkwardly. God knows when this dance will be. During the week he came to St. Petersburg, Ferdinand attended various balls, except for the blind date ball. This is the marriage of Alexander III to his daughter. When will others decide? Ferdinand knows the rules anyway, just wait honestly. At the Gatchina Palace, Alexander III is discussing with Queen Maria Fyodorovna. For Ferdinand, no matter his background or personal ability, they all recognize it, but if he wants to become his son-in-law, then it is naturally another set of standards. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. Engagement. It is estimated that Ferdinand did not expect that many trivial matters from childhood to adulthood were gathered into a thick document and placed in front of Alexander III. The intelligence organization of the Russian Empire is not for nothing, and it is very handy to inquire about these not very secret things. As for true and false, don't be too demanding about this, as long as it's roughly the same. Alexander III looked at Ferdinand's romantic history in recent years, frowned, and said with a blue face, "It's too outrageous. A king who doesn't manage the country well, actually keeps a group of dancing girls in the palace, playing and having fun all day long, play with things and lose their minds, don't think about progress, and act indiscriminately. Well, due to the indiscretions in his private life, all of Ferdinand's exploits have been wiped out here in an understatement and put on a hat of licentiousness." Maria Fyodorovna also frowned. They were well aware of the corruption of the nobles. Having a couple of dancing girls and part-time mistresses like Ferdinand is all pediatric, and at best it can only be said to be a little romantic. However, it was discovered by the future husband-in-law and mother-in-law at this time, and it will definitely not be using the same set of standards. Fortunately, in the current environment in Europe, Ferdinand has few competitors. As for private life, everyone is a noble, who is more clean than the other, and if you don't have a few lovers, you are ashamed to say that you are a fierce knight. Compared to the previous ones, these are still small problems. At least Ferdinand has no illegitimate children yet. The big deal is to let Xenia restrain him. For now, let's arrange for them to meet and talk about it. Maria Fyodorovna comforts herself. Alexander III also sighed deeply. Yes, I'm not afraid of not knowing the goods, but I'm afraid of comparing the goods. Although Ferdinand has many problems, compared to the others, these are all pediatrics, and he can be regarded as outstanding among his peers in terms of ability. For example, one of the candidates, King Alexander I of Serbia, has a terrible personal ability, as evidenced by the messy Serbia. It is said that he fell in love with a palace maid and planned to marry her as queen. Regardless of whether he is true or not, since there are rumors and rumors, it is time to come out and refute the rumors. Another example. By comparison, Alexander III is in a much better mood, and Ferdinand is not without merit. At least his ability to govern the country is obvious to all, and his political skills can be called the best in the world. The lone family went to a strange and excessive king, and it took only 2 years to complete the comeback, regain the power from the powerful ministers, and successfully completed the reform of Bulgaria. At the same time, he also perfectly threw the blame to the previous session, and the infamy was carried by others, and the credit was firmly in his hands. From these aspects, Ferdinand is indeed a qualified monarch. If Ferdinand knew what Alexander III had said of him, he would have been astonished. You must know that since the time of crossing, he has always pursued a low-key behavior, trying not to attract people's attention. Even if it is a planned operation to seize power, it is just hiding behind and pushing hands, making the best use of the situation. As a result, with his keen political sense, Alexander III made a guess. Okay then, if Xenia has no opinion, arrange for them to meet first. Let's talk about the rest later. Alexander III said depressedly. Okay, I'll arrange it. Queen Maria Fyodorovna said with a headache. Xenia's age has come, and the marriage can no longer be delayed. Most of the European aristocrats marry late. If there is no spouse of the same status, it does not matter if a man waits until he is 30 or 40 years old to get married, but women can't. Once they reach the age, they must consider marriage, otherwise they will be ridiculed by other nobles. Of course, as the princess of the Russian Empire, it is impossible for her to marry. In fact, a few years ago, there were an endless stream of people asking for marriage, and Ferdinand was one of them. Although he doesn't know it yet, in order to choose a satisfactory son-in-law from so many candidates, Queen Maria Fyodorovna also took great pains. The thick stack of information about Ferdinand could not be obtained in a short time. Ferdinand was able to get out of the way. In addition to his outstanding background, His personal ability and integrity also beat several competitors. Oh, this is a bad age. Ferdinand's victory did not depend on his excellent character, but on the fact that his opponent was too bad. Ferdinand, who was frozen into a dog, is still hiding in the warm bedroom. Knowing that the purpose of this visit is very important, he wisely kept his distance from the maids and did not search for flowers and willows in St. Petersburg. Well, Ferdinand admitted that he was a coward. Among all the people who went to their mother-in-law's house in the past life, which one is not well behaved? What's more, this husband is a powerful czar now. If he annoys him, don't lose half his life. Time passed quickly, and the boring Princess Clementina, in order to pass the time, reluctantly adapted to the life in St. Petersburg, and went out to socialize again, leaving Ferdinand alone to live the torment for years. As for taking the initiative to go out to communicate, for Ferdinand, who was born in an otaku, it is really too embarrassing. In addition to the irresistible invitation, Ferdinand stayed at home honestly for half a month in St. Petersburg. Christmas came, and at the grand Christmas banquet, Ferdinand finally saw his future wife, Grand Duke Xenia. This is a very temperamental girl. This is the first image of Ferdinand. Her beautiful hair was scattered over her body like a small brown waterfall. Waves and bling. European women are more mature. Although Princess Xenia is young and a little shy, she has already begun to take shape, and it is not far from the turbulent waves. If coupled with that graceful and luxurious temperament, it will become the focus wherever you go. As soon as the banquet was over, Queen Maria Fyodorovna grabbed Princess Xenia and asked with concern, "Xenia, how are you feeling?" "How about what?" Xenia said shyly. "Of course I'm asking you how Ferdinand is. Is my precious sister still satisfied?" Nicholas said teasingly at the back. 30,000 words omitted. In addition to passing by at the banquet, Ferdinand and Xenia attended several balls together, which were considered dates. Well, in terms of the relationship between men and women, Ferdinand is really not good, and Princess Xenia is similar, and there are really not many common topics between the two. Then Ferdinand was engaged to Grand Duchess Xenia in St. Petersburg. It's just so neat. The marriage between nobles doesn't have so much time for you to cultivate feelings. As long as the two sides don't hate each other, it is a good couple. Chapter 97, Crash Course for Military Cadres. Ferdinand returned to Sofia in February 1893. He spent more than 2 months in St. Petersburg. The biggest gain was an extra fiancé and a brief marching map. Returning to Sofia and seeing the sketch drawn by the Praetorian Guards, Ferdinand suddenly reacted. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was missed. Fortunately, there is still another chance. Ferdinand had already made up his mind. The following wedding activities must be vigorous. It is best to send tens of thousands of troops together. Such an open and honest opportunity to understand Russia cannot be missed. In order to draw a detailed map of the Balkans, the intelligence organization did its best. First, they stole the military maps of various countries, and then modified and improved them. Even so, it took only 2 years to complete a half of it. Not to mention the vastness of Russia. It is difficult to draw detailed maps. It is much simpler to go directly to the army, and the geographical topography is clear at a glance. As soon as news of Ferdinand's engagement spread, the Bulgarian media was buzzing. All kinds of entertainment gossip emerge in an endless stream, and there are several factions to fight each other. There are promi chasing horses, love at first sight, and ... For this reason, the press administration also sent a telegram to St. Petersburg, asking Ferdinand whether to ban such news. Considering the terribleness of entertainment gossip, Ferdinand resolutely approved it. The tighter this kind of news is, the faster it spreads. It's better to let the newspapers write it directly. They don't dare to touch the dark anyway. Don't think that it's not too big to watch. The fun is our patent. In fact, foreign entertainment gossip is not too much. Thanks to Ferdinand's good reputation, the Bulgarian people are also very concerned about his life events, and they are happy to hear such news. Many people speculate based on their own understanding, and have derived many versions of the story. Later generations also collected these stories and compiled a book, The Love Story that Archduke Ferdinand and Grand Duchess Xenia had to tell. After entering the 21st century, It has been adapted into movies and TV series many times. Ferdinand doesn't know what will happen in the future, but the current problems are enough to make him depressed. Does the love story thing have anything to do with him? He had a failed story with Princess Xenia, and even if he had met before, it was his ex. Anyway, after crossing the road, it was the first time the two met in St. Petersburg. Love at first sight may exist, but it has absolutely nothing to do with him. Princess Xenia is indeed a beautiful woman. If it was a previous life, Ferdinand could not ask for it. No matter whether he is emotional or not, having a beautiful wife is enough. But now, in the aristocratic life of a drunken fan, Ferdinand has become more hypocritical. If possible, Ferdinand hopes to stay single forever. Thinking of yin yang in the palace now, he is completely allowed to do whatever he wants. Whether it is prostitution in the daytime or being slept with, it is Ferdinand's favorite. Now, all this depraved life must leave him. At least in the palace his behavior must be restrained. Princess Xenia, as the daughter of Alexander III, such a sweet girl of the sky, you don't need to think about it and know that she has her own pride. Under the tradition of monogamy in the West, coupled with the newly emerging feminism, it is already generous to tolerate Ferdinand going out to find a lover. Dare to mess around in the palace, God knows what will happen. Anyway, Ferdinand didn't want to try. At least before the fall of the Russian Empire, he had to restrain himself. Thinking of the far-off sex life, Ferdinand decided to seize the last time and enjoy the good life. The beautiful girls are trying their best to dance, their big white legs are shaking in front of Ferdinand, and they are constantly throwing their eyes at him. Ferdinand couldn't bear it any longer, got up and rushed down, hugged a beautiful girl he liked, and quickly stripped it off. A battle began. A happy life is always short, and countless cases have taught Ferdinand a lesson. So work hard. After leaving for more than 2 months, although most of the government affairs are done by the cabinet, there are still many things that need to be decided by Ferdinand himself, and not everything can be telegraphed. At least the information submitted by the military commission is a top-secret file, and apart from Ferdinand, even Prime Minister Constantine has no right to intervene. Now Ferdinand summoned the Chief of Staff Petrov in the palace. Colonel Petrov, why is the process of military reform so slow? Petrov said in embarrassment, Your Excellency, the Grand Duke, we are currently lacking enough officers. Since the reform of the army, each full-time officer has been assigned 2 deputies, and the army has nearly doubled, and our officers are in demand. You has increased 5-fold out of thin air, which greatly exceeds our reserves. The company and platoon level officers at the lowest level are not bad. We can promote some veterans with outstanding abilities to fill the positions of most of the personnel. However, middle and senior officers, on the premise of ensuring quality, come on, we really can't get so many officers. Ferdinand nodded with satisfaction, affirming the military's pragmatic attitude. In history, the combat effectiveness of the Bulgarian army was the highest in the Balkans, and it was known as the Prussia of the Balkans. It has nothing to do with the current military's current attitude of preferring to be deficient and pragmatic. Well, it's better to be short than bad. You've done a good job. Then have you considered sending some outstanding soldiers to the military academy for short-term training to make up for the lack of grassroots officers? It is also possible to send some officers with insufficient ability back to the military academy to continue their studies for a period of time. Improve tactical ability? Ferdinand asked suggestively. Ferdinand has always pursued professional affairs and left it to professionals. There is no doubt that he has little knowledge of the military. If the military information on Baidu is reliable, he can barely be regarded as an expert on the artillery. Although this kind of temporary training mechanism for officers has been proved to be very effective in the past life, the culture between the East and the West is very surprising. It is difficult to say whether it will work in Bulgaria in this time and space. Petrov pondered for a moment, and was very embarrassed to answer Ferdinand's words. Your Excellency, Grand Duke, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't answer you. We have no experience in this area, and no one is sure how effective it will be. But personally, I think your proposal is very constructive and worth a try. Ferdinand nodded dejectedly. The German army has always been the object of learning from the Bulgarian military, and now even the officers' way of doing things is unknowingly approaching them. Whether this change is good or bad, Ferdinand doesn't know either. History has proved that it works well, so just let it go. Then let's carry out the pilot first. Let the military academy set up a short-term training class, and select a group of people to try it out. If the effect is good, it will be promoted to the whole army, and if it doesn't work, it will be cancelled. Ferdinand said. Yes, Your Excellency the Archduke, Petrov replied in a strong voice. Chapter 98, 1893. 1893 was a turbulent year. On January 17, the last monarch of the Kingdom of Hawaii, Queen Liliuokalani, tried to amend the constitution, but the coup d'état was triggered. In this coup, Hawaii the kingdom was eventually overthrown. It is worth mentioning that after the coup d'état, the U.S. troops quickly landed in Hawaii, thus making this coup a success. After the coup, the Queen was placed under house arrest at the Iolani Palace. Hawaii's monarchy was replaced by a rebel provisional government, and Hawaii entered a republic period that eventually became part of the United States in 1898. 100 years after the coup, the U.S. Congress passed a Public International Law 103-105, also known as the Apology Resolution, which publicly apologized for the U.S. government's involvement in supporting the coup in the Kingdom of Hawaii. This resolution was signed by U.S. President Bill Clinton on November 23, 1993. The demise of the Kingdom of Hawaii marked that the United States was no longer willing to be lonely, set off a clarion call for expansion into the Pacific Ocean, and laid a hidden danger for future conflicts between the United States and Japan. In 1893 the British announced the establishment of the Nigerian Coastal Protectorate. The same year the French occupied the adjacent Dahomey region. The British Royal Niger Company and the French have clashed fiercely on the western border of Nigeria. In this Niger crisis, Britain and France almost went to war, and the conflict lasted until 1898. When the two countries signed an agreement to carve up West Africa. In the same year, the Anglo-German crisis in South Africa broke out. In order to prevent the British from gaining the whole of South Africa and annexing the two Boer republics, in 1893 German capitalists, with the support of the government, built the railway from Pretoria to present-day Maputo. The Boers Republic gained access to the Indian Ocean and got rid of the port dependence on the British. Germany controlled most of the Boers' trade, and the contradiction between Britain and Germany in South Africa intensified. These international events have little impact on Bulgaria in a short period of time, but it is very important to study international relations. Ferdinand maintained the good habit of collecting information, and copied a copy to the military and political elites, which helped them broaden their horizons. In 1893, the economic crisis broke out, and the United States, as far away as the Pacific region, suffered this time. As the aftermath of overinvestment in railways erupted, the railway bubble burst, triggering a full-scale economic crisis. The American railroad crisis has attracted attention from all walks of life in Bulgaria. Bulgaria's large railway plan has also aroused widespread concern and panic in all sectors of society. In order to stabilize people's hearts, Ferdinand published and copied Seeking Truth from Facts articles in major Bulgarian newspapers. The article points out the causes and consequences of the American railroad crisis, and emphasizes that repetitive construction and vicious competition is the core of this crisis. Citing a wealth of evidence that the Bulgarian railway plan is feasible, it has been publicly announced that the government will not approve multiple railways on the same line, in order to avoid vicious competition. 1893 was a pivotal year for Bulgaria. On August 15, the first steel plant in Bulgaria, Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen Steel Plant, was officially put into operation, with a daily output of 525 tons of steel, including 105 tons of steel and 420 tons of iron. Remarks: the maintenance and repair of the steel plant equipment in the 19th century took up a lot of time, and production cannot be guaranteed every day. The start of production of Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen marks a new chapter in the Bulgarian heavy industry. The Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen steel plant was not only the largest steel plant in Bulgaria at that time, but also ranked among the top 30 in the world. Thanks to the large railway plan in Bulgaria, the Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen steel plant can produce as much as possible without worrying about sales in the short term. Since Bulgaria lacks coking coal for steel making, it needs to be imported from Ukraine, which increases the cost of steel plants. Compared with the current steel prices in the international market, it is not competitive. However, the Bulgarian government still chooses to support domestic production. In fact, as soon as the Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen steel plant was put into operation, Ferdinand stopped importing steel from abroad, even if the steel was very cheap in the economic crisis. After the outbreak of the economic crisis, international steel prices fell by a third. Ferdinand is very clear about the importance of steel to a country. Even if the Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen steel plant is not competitive in the short term, and even suffers losses, it must continue to do so. Well, with the establishment of the Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen steel plant, Ferdinand made another profit from middle school. The machinery factory that has been transformed into spare parts finally won a long-lost big order. Although the profit of the product is not huge, the equipment maintenance in the later period is the big deal. Anyway, now Bulgaria and even the entire Balkan region is the only one with this technical strength. The newly established Royal Bank has ushered in its first business and found a market for its iron ore. Although it is supplied at the price of cabbage, there are additional conditions. The financial business of Mercedes-Benz Volkswagen was underwritten by Royal Bank, which is a good deal no matter how you look at it. Recently, good news from Bulgaria has been coming one after another. The benefits of the first 5-year plan have been fully completed. For example, the improvement of transportation has made the logistics cost of Bulgaria drop sharply, accelerated the transaction of commodities, and promoted the development of the economy. According to the statistics of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, in the first half of 1893 compared with 1892, Bulgaria's economic growth rate was 13%. Another example is the promotion of new agricultural technologies. The income of farmers has increased substantially, and there are not many recreational activities in rural areas in this era. After living well, the movement to create people will naturally begin, and new babies are born one after another. According to expert estimates, in 1893 Bulgaria had 185,000 to 191,000 newborn babies, and the birth rate continued to remain at a relatively high level of about 4.725% to 4.775%. In the midsummer of 1893, the sky in Sofia was extraordinarily hot. On August 18, facing the rising sun, Ferdinand hurriedly got into the carriage and hurried out the door, trying to escape the thick scorching sun. Today is a big day. The first batch of Bulgarian college students is about to graduate. How can Ferdinand, the principal of the school, be absent? Ferdinand is in a very unhappy mood now. God seems to be deliberately doing the right thing with him. Today's weather is extraordinarily hot, and it can be said to be the hottest day since the beginning of summer. Although there were ice cubes made in the carriage to cool down, how could Ferdinand be a pleasure seeker, thinking that the weather should not be hot in the morning? In order to show the spirit of sharing weal and woe with the soldiers, he decisively called people to evacuate before departure. Then he regrets it now. The summer day really can't be managed with common sense. The weather that was fine before going out has suddenly become sultry. Ferdinand, who was about to cry without tears, is now swallowing his teeth, hoping to reach his destination sooner. The journey did not change according to Ferdinand's expectations. It lasted for more than 3 hours before the team slowly entered the Bulgarian university. At this time, Ferdinand was sweating profusely. After getting off the carriage, seeing the teachers and students waiting for a long time under the scorching sun, Ferdinand's mood improved a lot, and he was not alone. As for the soldiers who were decisively ignored by Ferdinand, compared with a usual training situation, rushing for a few hours under the hot sun was all pediatrics. Under the warm welcome of all the teachers and students, Ferdinand stepped onto the podium and started a passionate speech under the thick scorching sun. Students and teachers, good morning everyone. I am very happy to meet you here today. You are all the elites of the country and the hope of the nation. Today, we are here, Stand on the land of the Bulgarians. Stand in Sofia, the land that our ancestors watered with blood and dignity. Open our history book, thousands of years. We have too much glorious history. It is worth going to the big book. Now what? A small Balkan country. Some people may say that a lot of objective reasons will be found. Today I'm going to tell you, that's all bullshit. Why has Bulgaria weakened in modern times? Simply put, there are more people talking and fewer people doing things. A big rhetoric theoretician. In fact, his contribution to this country is not as good as that of an ordinary worker and a hard-working peasant. In modern times, some people of insight have all turned to European powers to find a way to become a powerful country, but I want to say, they are all wrong. The reason that restricts the strength of Bulgaria is very simple. It is not the idea, nor the system. In fact, we all know that there are only two core issues. One is resources, the other is population. Throughout the world's major powers, without exception, have these two conditions. Many people are afraid to face this problem. Why? Are they incompetent? Didn't find these problems? Of course not. Empty talk will mislead the country. Hard work will rejuvenate the country. Don't have any hope for a group of talkers. They are not what this country wants. You are. Behind us are the 4 million Bulgarians whose hard work has nurtured us. What for? Dignity. Dignity to live alone. To be among the nations of the world. We can proudly say, Bulgaria has risen. Find the problem. Face the problem. Find a way to solve the problem. A country does not become strong overnight. We can't do it in 10 years, so what about 20 years? Still no, it doesn't matter, we can continue to work hard. 50 years later, 100 years later, one day we can complete the great rejuvenation of the country and the nation. Chapter 99, Quiet Military Education. After Ferdinand finished pretending to be coercive at the Bulgarian university, he personally issued a graduation certificate to the more than 400 students at the scene. After a busy day, Ferdinand didn't have time to rest, and the Minister of Education, Chekhov, ran over in sweat. Ferdinand asked suspiciously, Chekhov, what's so urgent? Your Excellency the Grand Duke, I'm sorry to disturb your rest. We are in trouble regarding the arrangement of college graduates. Chekhov wiped his sweat and said. Hearing this, Ferdinand became even more puzzled. It must be known that the quality of this year's university graduates is very high, and they are all science and engineering majors, which are scarce talents, and it is not easy to find employment. So he asked, what's the problem? Chekhov looked at Ferdinand and said with some embarrassment, Your Excellency, the Grand Duke, this is our underestimation. Regarding the arrangement of college students, they are all carried out by reference to returning students. We have also conducted relevant investigations before, according to the willingness has been adjusted. But just now the school sent us new applications from students, and many people gave up their original administrative positions, hoping to go to the front line to do technical work. After listening to Chekhov's explanation, Ferdinand knew the cause and effect. Mostly it was his speech today that stimulated this group of young students. At the same time, he was even more puzzled. This is a good thing. Haven't we been advocating it all the time? This mainly because we didn't expect such a change, and we couldn't get so many suitable positions for a while. Chekhov said hesitantly. Oh, I see, it's really troublesome. Let me think about it first. Ferdinand said with a headache. If it's normal, it's just a little trouble. Some people resettle first, and some people delay the resettlement for a few months. It doesn't matter. The problem now is that Ferdinand just pretended to be coercive today. In front of all the teachers and students of the school, he made a clear promise to everyone to work together, and he couldn't slap himself. This is also the reason why Chekhov hurried over. In fact, this class of college students is in high demand, and many departments are making ideas, and there is simply not enough points. The list of job placement has long been determined and has been sent to the school. Now, due to Ferdinand's reasons, Many of the previous arrangements have been abolished. Ferdinand kept wandering back and forth. After a while, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said uncertainly, "Isn't the reserve plan started? Why don't we organize them and train for 3 months first?" Chekhov said cautiously, "Okay, there is a 3-month buffer, which is enough for us to deal with the rest. And now that the National Reserve has been activated, they will have to participate in training sooner or later, and no one can say anything." This time, it was Ferdinand's turn to be dumbfounded. He did not expect this unreliable proposal, and Chekhov would also express his support, also found a reasonable excuse. Does the Bulgarian reserve plan include these students? Obviously, as long as Ferdinand is not an idiot, it is impossible to send them to the battlefield as cannon fodder. This is his direct line! After thinking about it, Ferdinand decided to do it. Simply put, all students will graduate after 3 months of basic training. That is to exercise their bodies, but also hone their willpower, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Then let's just popularize it. From elementary school to university, all students must have no less than 1 month of military training every year, and 3 months after graduation, for patriotism education. We also need to increase the class hours. I have asked Austrian for teaching materials. The Hungarian experts have prepared it. You can take a look first. Ferdinand waved his hand and made a decision. The shocked Chekhov was stunned, and after a while, he came to his senses, and nodded dazedly. Then the Bulgarian students fell blood mold, and what was a happy vacation has now turned into a painful training. Ferdinand also euphemistically called it to improve the overall quality of students, but in fact it was a complete militaristic education. However, in the 19th century, militarism was not notorious, especially in the Balkans, and there were more or less shadows of militarism in every country. Patriotism education, not to mention, loyalty to the monarch and patriotism was almost one at that time, and Ferdinand's private goods were mixed in, but it was impossible to find faults on the bright side. Students of this era are not spoiled by later generations. There are not many of them, and no educators have shouted for them. The absence of holidays means more study time and no tuition fees. What a good thing! Parents don't care about their opinions. Ferdinand knew that since the age of electricity has not yet fully entered, the tasks of the Bulgarian students are not very heavy. At least they will not have self-study in the future. The content to be learned is not as much as the later generations. Piano, painting, dance, etc. are still the patent of the nobles. If it weren't for the cost, Ferdinand really didn't mind and moved his work and rest schedule to Bulgaria. After thinking about it, Ferdinand still gave up. Electricity in this era is not cheap. The annual electricity bill of Bulgarian universities makes the Ministry of Education complain a lot, and it only supplies electricity to classrooms, laboratories, offices, other dormitories and canteens. Sorry, Bulgaria is not so proud yet. Even at the time, Bulgarian students were the hardest in the world. Starting from the second 5-year plan, weekends have been changed to single breaks. Winter and summer vacations do not exist, and the longest Christmas vacation is only 3 days. The concept in the education world is if the quality is not enough, just use the time to make it up. Anyway, putting in more effort will always have an effect, and the facts have proved that it is indeed very effective. In the past 2 years, the graduation rate of primary and secondary school students has greatly improved. At the end of the 19th century, the standard of living of Europeans was mostly brown bread, and it was not necessary to eat meat several times a year. It was not bad to be able to eat enough. Bulgaria has developed well in recent years, and the improvement of people's living standards is limited to the fact that everyone can fill their stomachs. There are more vegetables and fruits on the table, and occasionally they can eat meat. Ferdinand knew that if military training was carried out, many children from bitter backgrounds would have nutritional problems. He also knows that the Ministry of Education has proposed food subsidies very early, but due to financial difficulties, only some students with excellent grades can receive subsidies. So he asked Chekhov, if we subsidize meals for students across the country during military training, how much will it cost? Chekhov, who was still in deep thought, reacted at once. thought for a moment and said, "Your Excellency, there are now more than 364,000 students in the country. According to the calculation of 1 month's military training for the students each year, 3 months for the graduates. According to military training calculations, if basic subsidies are given, the annual expenditure will be about 500,000 levs." When he heard the number of people just now, Ferdinand was startled, thinking it would be an astronomical number, but the price quoted by Chekhov was much smaller. Needless to say, Ferdinand also knew what was going on. Bulgaria itself is a food-producing country, and the unit price of the government's unified procurement is much lower. Chapter 100. The government is running out of money. After sending Chekhov away, Ferdinand admired himself a little, and his ability to carry private goods was already perfect. Things that are irrelevant to the wind, horses and cattle, are just pulled together, and they are so reasonable! Chekhov is in a very bad mood now. The Ministry of Education's application for funding has been suppressed by the Ministry of Finance. Honest people are also angry. For a mere 500,000 levs, the Ministry of Finance dares to say that it has no money and wants to suspend the funding. Isn't this an obvious loss of face? At the moment, Chekhov broke into the Ministry of Finance angrily and found the Chancellor of the Exchequer Kennedy Ivanov directly. "Mr. Kennedy, can you tell me why the Ministry of Education has been suppressed this time? Don't tell me the mere 500,000 lev, the Ministry of Finance has not." Although he has tried his best to suppress his anger, the meaning of Zingshi's guilt is still very obvious. In the face of Chekhov's indictment, Kennedy was not annoyed. The Treasury Department has seen this kind of thing a lot. Still smiling, he said, "Mr. Chekhov, believe it or not, our Ministry of Finance really can't come up with this money now." Of course, it's not that the Ministry of Finance has no money now, the problem is that the money has been used for it. It doesn't take long to wait. As soon as the income of the tax department next month is recorded, I will allocate money to you immediately. Chekhov did not agree with the statement made by the Chancellor of the Exchequer Kennedy. He knew exactly how Bulgaria's finances were going. How could there be a mere 500,000 leva shortfall? He looked at Kennedy with a sneer, and said dissatisfiedly, "Really? Then please Mr. Kennedy and explain it to His Excellency the Grand Duke in person." Hearing this, Kennedy's face changed greatly. He knew that Chekhov was really angry. In the face of the cabinet ministers who were trusted by Ferdinand, he still had no confidence to fight back. So he opened the safe, took out a stack of documents and handed them over, and said with a wry smile, "Mr. Chekhov, money is being used everywhere in Bulgaria now. In addition to the previous budget, you should know how many additional projects have been allocated. No matter how much money the Ministry of Finance has, it will not be enough. If it continues, we will face a financial crisis in the near future. The specific situation is in it, and we are preparing to report it to the cabinet." Chekhov took the document and looked at it carefully. The more he read, the more amazing the content was. He never thought that the government could spend so much money. After a while, he closed the file and said in disbelief, "Is this all true? Of course, every expense on this is clear, especially after the outbreak of the economic crisis. In order to get rid of the crisis as soon as possible, we launched many projects ahead of schedule, which greatly exceeded the budget, and the previous accumulation and loans are now almost exhausted." "Yes," Kennedy said cautiously. Chekhov knows that the trouble is big, and the financial crisis is not enough now, but many projects will be affected in the later stage, or abandoned or postponed. This means that the rapid development of Bulgaria is about to end, which is absolutely unacceptable to the current government. "I see. Since the problem is so serious, why didn't you report it in advance?" Chekhov asked suspiciously. Kennedy said with a wry smile, "Mr. Chekhov, we didn't expect that there are so many new projects in the past 2 months, and many of them are outside the 5-year plan." Having said this, both of them resolutely shut their mouths. This is all Ferdinand's fault, and many of the latter projects were approved by him personally, and if we continue to discuss it, we are blaming his own boss. At the cabinet meeting in August, everyone was distressed after reading the report sent by the Ministry of Finance. On the surface, there is no problem now, as long as new gold-swallowing beasts are not added, It can be handled completely. But this is impossible. If nothing else, the arsenal expansion project, which will be launched at the beginning of the year, cannot be stopped, right? 5 million levs before and after is indispensable! And the big wedding behind Ferdinand was another big expense. This one cannot be saved. The Grand Duke's face cannot be lost, and Mountain's face cannot be denied! And many more. Constantine broke the silence and said, "Gentlemen, everyone has read the analysis of the Ministry of Finance. If we want to continue to complete the following projects, according to the most optimistic estimates in 1894, we faced a deficit of 12 million levs. In 1895, we faced a deficit of 35 million. In 1896, we faced a deficit of 50 million levs, and in 1897, this figure will reach 80 million leva, which is more than half of our current fiscal revenue! That is to say, our Bulgarian financial crisis is coming! This problem has plagued Bulgaria many years ago, and now it is coming back. What should we do? Now there are only two choices before the cabinet: either to make money to solve the fiscal deficit that may break out in the future, or to cut off some projects and save money. Well, now the international debt of the Bulgarian government is already as high as 150 million leva, and the annual interest alone has to pay 11 million leva. Compared with the more than 600 million of neighboring Greece, and the more than 300 million of Serbia, it is still nothing! But for external loans, everyone is discouraged, not to mention the high interest. The key is to mortgage the sovereignty! The people sitting here are all high-ranking people, and no one wants to carry the infamy of being a traitor. Your Excellency Prime Minister, I propose to suspend some projects that are not particularly important, and then start them after the finances improve. Chancellor of the Exchequer Kennedy said cautiously, "No, I am against it. The success of the 5-year plan will determine whether we can complete industrialization in Bulgaria. We cannot delay or even give up because of short-term difficulties." The Minister of Industry immediately retorted, "I support now the government's financial situation. It is true that so many projects can no longer be launched blindly, otherwise the follow-up funds may be pressed to our bankruptcy." The Minister of Foreign Affairs echoed, "I oppose. Now is the most critical moment for Bulgaria. As long as this difficulty is overcome, nothing can stop Bulgaria from becoming strong." The Minister of Transport said angrily. Constantine clapped the table with a snap and said, "Enough! If you keep arguing like this, it is estimated that everyone will be sitting here tomorrow. The old rule is now to show a vote. The minority obeys the majority, and there can be no abstention. If you agree with the Minister of Finance, please raise your hand." As soon as the words were finished, the people who supported the proposal to cut the project raised their hands one after another. Constantine glanced at the audience, slowly raised his hand, and said, 5 votes in favor, 4 votes against. Pass. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.